Good morning, dear colleagues. May I request Dean Pamela to join the main table? Nalongo, don't sit behind. Come and join the main table. And you? Do you want to join the main table? Pardon? Yes, you're allowed. Yeah, you can join also. Yeah. You can sit near him. Sit there, sit near. This one is mine. Sit near Dr. Gilbert. Yes. Okay. Are you set? Allow me to use this opportunity to welcome you to Mr. Rugyendo's PhD defense. Mr. Rugyendo, I can see him beaming. I know it has been a long journey. We've gone through thick and thin, but we thank the Almighty Allah that finally we are here, and we hope and pray that all will go well. Allow me to introduce the members of the panel. We have Dr. Isaac Tibasima, the critical reader, although I prefer calling him the devil's advocate. Dr. Fred Kakoza, Dr. Levis Mugumya, Dr. Gilbert Gumushabe, Dr. William Tayeebwa, the supervisor, Dr. Adolf Mbaine. Is he online or is planning to join us? And Dr. Sarah Namsoga. And allow me use this opportunity to introduce Dr. Kanakwa Pamela, Dean School of Liberal and Performing Arts, and Dr. Nalongo Charlotte, Head Department of History and Archaeology. Any heads have not introduced? Yeah, I think. Yeah, the rest of the heads are on the panel. Levis is the head Department of Linguistics and English Language Studies. And Dr. Gilbert Gumushabe is the head Department of African Languages. And at this juncture, allow me to welcome our colleague and friend, the Chief Directorate of Graduate Training, Professor Chikoma. You are very welcome. Today is a special day and special defense. It's the first one I've seen him attending. So this is how we are going to proceed. The candidate will be given 30 minutes to speak to us. After that, the critical reader will interact with the candidate and will use maximum of 40 minutes. If we use fewer, the better. And then after the critical reader's engagement with the candidate, the rest of the panelists will engage the candidate. Rugyendo, you have my prayers. please join the floor and speak to us. Oh, I forgot the online audience. Do we have any? You are very welcome, colleagues who are online.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for coming to witness my for my public PhD defense. And my name is Arinaitwe Rugyendo. I'm here to present my work titled From Print to Digital, Evolution, Adoption, and Contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan Press. This work was supervised by Dr. William Tayeebwa and Dr. William Mbaine. This is my presentation outline. I will look at my motivation, statement of the problem, methods of data collection, findings, and key contributions as the major areas of focus. My motivation, I was motivated by the decline of the press globally, not only just in Uganda, but globally. And also the threat of social media, news aggregators like Google and Meta, and then robotic journalists that compete with journalists at print media houses. And then finally, the other motivation was the print media shutdowns and press closures in the global south, especially occasioned by illiberal regimes of the global south. My background, of course, now speaks to this situation. The newspapers globally find themselves in a polycrisis. A polycrisis is a situation where militants and circumstances, negative circumstances occasion systems. For example, in this case, newspapers have been facing closures, layoffs, staff layoffs due to rising costs, production costs especially, and falls in advertising and circulation revenues. In 2025, the statistics showed that the news aggregator Google had 5.9 million Google searches per minute and 85 billion searches per day. Compare that to the focus, to the attention that the same people give to newspapers. It's a very minimal attention. So to stay afloat, media outlets, especially newspapers, have turned to e-subscriptions, have turned to erecting paywalls, and also adopting electronic newspapers, which I call ePapers in this study, as an alternative revenue source to the print. So in this study, I ask the question, how can we understand this phenomenon? Is Uganda alone in this? That's not possible. The pressure is felt globally. It's felt nationally here in the region, in Africa, and in Europe, US, everywhere. Now, but these emerging technologies that have forced, have pressured print media houses, combined with ruthless market forces, have constrained print media globally. And also in the Ugandan context, we lack proper, adequate communication research on these digital transformations taking place. Instead, we are relying on global north perspectives on ePapers. This is why in this study, I explore the evolution, adoption, and contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan press. But we need to understand, what are ePapers? The ePapers are that picture you see on the right, and then the description in scholarly work, they are seen as digital twins to the print edition. And they are PDF-like formats, and they bring that convergence of both worlds, particularly the print and also the digital version. They are not online-only news outlets. For example, that picture shows the New Vision outlet, newsline online outlet. And then Daily Monitor Red Paper has the same. Good examples are like Chimp Reports, Trumpet News, Nile Post, Kampala Report, PML Daily, etc. And they are not physical newspapers. They are not to be confused by these types of papers that you find on the streets. So what is my statement of the problem? Ugandan newspapers faced a recent polycrisis, like I've said, of plummeting circulation and rising costs, where rapid digital transitions threaten both their financial viability and normal newspaper expectations. Current scholarship suffers from digital noise by failing to distinguish the unique structure, integrity, and editorial layout of ePapers from broader social media and online news platforms like we have seen. So therefore, there is a critical lack in the global south and even locally here of data on how the nexus between technology, social cultural imperatives, and political economy imperatives, how they drive digital adoption, specifically in Uganda and also in the media landscape. So there is a puzzle. What is this puzzle? Despite a high-stakes pivot towards the digital platforms, the Ugandan press is attempting to secure its institutional future through a hybrid medium called the ePaper, which remains a conceptual and empirical black box. There exists a profound misalignment where neither exists scholarship nor industry practice that has sufficiently reconciled ePaper's unique structural affordances with the economic imperatives and neo-patrimonial constraints of the Ugandan media landscape. Therefore, in this study, I attempt an intervention where we explore the evolution, adoption, and contribution of ePapers in the press. My objectives, the main objective was to explore the evolution, adoption, and contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan press. The specific objectives are: one, to explore the factors that have influenced the evolution of ePapers in Uganda; number two, to assess the drivers of the adoption of ePapers in Uganda; and also three, to evaluate the contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan press; and four, to propose a business model for the ePaper industry in Uganda. The research questions, Madam Chairperson, reflect the objectives that I've just read. So what was my theoretical framework? I considered a constellation of three theories: technology determinism, social shaping of technology, and critical political economy of media. What is technology determinism? It defines a historical era in technology terms. It means its postulation is that technology shapes systems. Technology determines life, and not the other way around. And its relevance to this study is that ePapers are seen as digital products, are seen as products produced by technology or sustained by technology, but has a limitation. It overlooks other issues like social, cultural, and political agency in determining a technological artifact, for example. And also, it assumes that technology has shaped society, and that deterministic way is an assumption. Now, because of that limitation, I invoke the social shaping of technology theory. Now, for this, the social shaping of technology theory assumes a co-creation process, that technology and humanistic imperatives engage in a co-creation process to create phenomena. And in other words, that technology is shaped by human agency, culture, and norms. And its relevance to this study is that ePapers are being driven by social cultural factors like literacy rates in a given country, for example, maybe even limited access to print media drives the need, the desire to look for ePapers. And so, and also, that ePapers are produced through a collaborative mechanism. You have technology, and also you have the producers of ePapers in the newsrooms. But it also has a limitation. It estimates power dynamics within its scope. There are power dynamics that are involved. There are ownership issues. There are, for example, government issues surrounding technology and adoption. And it struggles to predict technology change in illiberal settings. Now, because of that limitation, I invoked critical political economy of media. Now, for political economy of media theory, it postulates that phenomena are determined through structures, through political, economic, and cultural power systems, through class dynamics, through ideologies, through politics of distribution, production, and distribution of consumption of goods and services. And it's very relevant, this study, because you see ePapers, newspapers transforming to digital platforms to respond to revenue issues. These are political economy issues, for example, circulation falls, advertising falls, for example. Also digital pricing, they are not given for free, and also that ePapers are read by those that have paid for them. So there is a situation of digital enclaves here, and political economy helps us to understand that online setting. But it has a limitation. It emphasizes structures and delineates or ignores individual agency. And for that matter, my option is in this study that there is need for a theoretical cross-pollination of these three to be able to create a theoretical framework that shapes how this study pans out. And I came up with a social, technical, political economy framework, which encompasses these three, which brings them together and cross-pollinates them. And it is even supported by scholarship that, you know, because theoretical cross-pollination helps to, for example, to gain a comprehensive evaluation of a complex phenomenon like ePaper, which we don't know about, and also to generate evidence-based data. That cross-pollination between technology determinism, social shaping of technology, and political economy of media, you know, is what is informing this framework of SPACE that is going to be very relevant in this study. So I got my methodology. This methodology took a world view, which is the paradigm state, and I considered interpretive critical realism, and it mixes elements of critical realism and interpretivism. Critical realism looks at, you know, how social realities are shaped by enduring structures, and also then how human agency, you know, is not subject to existentialism, but interprets phenomena, and its utility is fused with space, because when exploring this phenomenon demonstrates that intersection of politics, of political economy imperatives, of technology determinants, and also social-cultural imperatives. Now, my approach was qualitative, and I did an exploratory case study design of the New Vision newspaper, because the New Vision newspaper is the leading newspaper in the country, but also was the first to adopt the ePaper model. For methods of data collection, I used key informant interviews as espoused in Questwell, but also I fused it with ethnography. Ethnography is a model, is a qualitative model for studying online communities. It is ethnography online. The assumption is that there are physical societies, but there are also virtual societies online, and ethnography is good at exploring that. So for the tools, I used an interview guide for key informant interviews, and also an ethnographical kit to collect ethnographic data. My scope is structured in terms of geography, in terms of time, and also in terms of content. For time, I looked at the period between 2015 and 2025, because this is the time when ePaper was developed in Uganda or were adopted in Uganda. For geography, I looked at Kampala for key informant interviews, but also the cyberspace for ethnography data. Content, of course, it is encased within the evolution, adoption, and contribution of ePapers. But the population study, the study population was mainly the publishers of New Vision staff. They are subscribers of the ePaper, experts, government officials, experts, those with expert knowledge on this subject of special digitization. And also, particularly for ethnography, I looked at an online community at New Vision, which is their ePaper WhatsApp channel, as we shall see later. For the sampling strategy, I considered purposive sampling, because this phenomenon is new, is inadequately studied, and I wanted to seek out those with expert knowledge about these media transformations and emerging technologies. And Creswell and Clark, of course, call it intentional selection, because it helps to select participants with specialized knowledge, with the expertise. My sample size was 25, but I hit the saturation point at the 19th participant. Demographics wise, I interacted with 10 females and also 15 males. Data collection, when it came to data collection, for key informant interviews, I used a recorder, an electronic recorder, and also a field notebook to capture sentiments, to capture, not sentiments, but to capture non-communicable data. Then for ethnography, I used a six-step protocol proffered by coordinates, and it says you initiate, you immerse yourself in the WhatsApp channel, in this case, for example, and investigate what's happening there, and then integrate the data that you've collected, and then incarnate it. Incarnation in this case means what I'm doing now, disseminating the results. And for analysis, I used a manual thematic analysis encased in grounded theory and triangulation. I need to take you to the manual thematic analysis as espoused in Bingham 2023. It takes a five-phase process, which is organizing the data, sorting the data into topical categories, then coding, open coding, then memoing, and then applying the theory and literature to make sense of the data. So in terms of organizing the data, I transcribed 19 key informant interviews. I also organized the ethnographic data, and then that I picked from the WhatsApp channel. And then what came out was a manageable and sorted organizational schema. Then when it came to sorting, aligned the data, this data with the research questions, and also filtered the non-relevant data to maintain quality. Then for open sourcing, I was able to manually break down and segment the different themes and inductively seek out patterns. And I landed on patterns like job listings, branding, leadership, and revenue generation. For memoing, I continuously coded and then immersed in my ethnographic data to be able to capture some reflexivity in this, and then generated an audit trail to ensure that the data is quality indeed. I applied the theory at this stage, which is my space framework and extant literature, to be able to contextualize my findings within the national, regional, and global discourse, but also inform my proposed model. I faced limitations. One of the limitations in collecting this data was positionality, because I only arrived on newspaper to New Vision, but that gave me an advantage in terms of technical knowledge about the industry, and I made sure that objectivity was maintained. Also, this data I picked from the WhatsApp channel was mediated. I was not able to go in and interact and observe the live interactions there because of the Data Protection and Privacy Act, which New Vision invoked. But I shifted to what is called archival ethnography to be able to extract the data, which really was interactive and evidently feedbacking. Then there is also the limitation about social desirability bias. This is where I thought or felt that some of the respondents or some of the participants, because of the sensitive media environment in this country and the topic, might have sanitized their responses for political correctness and safety. My findings: the first objective, evolution of ePapers in the Ugandan press. I found out the study finds that that the structured adjustment programs that liberalized the Ugandan economy set the stage for a liberalized media and the tech-driven media that we see today. And it speaks to CP and SPEF because of the imperatives I mentioned earlier. The study also finds that the role of technology, particularly the 1997 Communications Act that liberalized the telecommunications sector, and then ushering in MTN and Celtel at that time, and their internet offerings were triggers to the press from remaining static and starting to consider online options. Then the rapidity of social media was around 2024. Social media was a tipping point in which newspapers started to get worried about their audiences, get worried about their dwindling readerships, and this necessitated the adoption of ePapers, particularly New Vision at that time. I have a participant voice here to support this. Social media's disruption triggered a circulation panic forcing a strategic pivot from free web content, which cannibalized print sales, to the ePaper replica designed to preserve the brand's traditional feel while stemming audience migration to alternative digital platforms. This was James Tumsime, a former managing director of the Observer newspaper. Objective 2 was adoption of ePapers in the Ugandan press. The study discovered that, or found that the request for archival access is driving adoption to ePapers. Readers at the New Vision are always searching for back papers or old newspapers, and they can only access them via the adoption, via the ePaper platform. The search for education content, like especially around the new curriculum about jobs, is also driving adoption of ePapers at the New Vision. Then I also discovered, discovered that there are always WhatsApp inquiries in the channel from around this time, 5 a.m. and always requesting for guidance. Yet the New Vision has a frequently asked an FAQ in its, and also it has an elaborate onboarding system, but that shows that it's not yet fully intuitive. It's not yet a do-it-yourself onboarding system. There are also technical glitches around the ePaper platform. It's not, for example, there are no live interactions, and post-payment access failures are many on that platform, which require human intervention, which means that then, which resonates with social shaping of technology, that to solve technical glitches, you need the technology and also the human input. The third objective was the contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan press. The study finds that ePapers have improved circulatory efficiency. And now ePapers, now print newspapers can now cross borders, can bypass geographical constraints, can also bypass infrastructure barriers, can also be found in our embassies abroad because of the ePaper version of the print press. They have also, secondly, they have also broadened the readership. Now rural readers, for example, can also know what is taking place in Kampala, especially if they want quality journalism from the legacy press. Also, one of the important findings that I found was that ePapers now act as digital shields against illiberal state interference in newspapers, and also press shutdowns and print press closures. Why? Because they provide this shield in terms of their unbreakable PDF formats, which are harder to confiscate, and you will not find a van carrying an ePaper, so you will not stop a van to stop a newspaper from reaching where it's supposed to reach. So, and then the other important finding is that ePapers have secured the financial sustainability of these newspapers, which in the poly crisis that I mentioned, the newspapers are facing have been facing a downward trend in terms of revenue generation. So, for example, at New Vision, I found that in 2023, the ePaper was able to generate 500 million shillings annually. And this money, which is like almost profit, did not exist in the print era. That is before the print was the only source of revenue at New Vision. I have more voices about this. When I am in Kanungu, which is a remote area in Western Uganda, visiting my in-laws, I just cannot get a physical newspaper in the small town of Kambuga. It is practically impossible to deliver newspapers in that remote place. But with the coming of the ePaper, I only need to go where the internet is and read my newspapers. This was by Robert Muhumza, a board member of Daily Monitor, who observed this. And then in terms of these ePapers becoming digital shields against predation of the press in the global south, PDFs can be shared via email, via messaging apps, and social media, making it difficult for illiberal authorities to intercept and censor them effectively. The static nature of PDFs ensures that ePapers can be accessed even offline, which is crucial for regions with unreliable internet connectivity and state controls. My key conclusions. because of time, I will read through them. The evolution of ePapers was anchored by the 1990s liberation period of the SAPS, and also the 1997 Communications Act. These policies enabled private media ownership to enable media ownership, and also the entry of telecoms like MTN and Celtel, providing the essential internet infrastructure that shifted newsrooms from traditional cycles to digital immediacy. Secondly, the other key conclusion that this study sees is that the adoption was achieved through a co-creation process, the adoption of ePapers through a co-creation process, resolving internal newsroom conflicts between traditionalists and progressives. For example, at Observer, there was even New Vision, there was this conflict, between the traditionalists who wanted to maintain the old format and the new generation, the Gen Zs, who wanted the new format. But this was accelerated by social media and the COVID-19 pandemic, which acted as a catalyst and also occasioning physical distribution failures. Those COVID pandemics and shutdowns occasioned a surge in digital subscriptions, especially at New Vision, where subscription rose from 2003 subscribers to 25,000 users during that year. The other key conclusion is that ePaper have democratized news access, especially the underserved communities or unserved communities can also access quality journalism from legacy news. And also that the long-term viability from moving away from static print replicas towards a business model, a new business model, the ePaper business model that prioritizes multimedia content, innovation, and localized payment is a key conclusion. The key contributions from this study, theoretically, the socio-technical framework, which I have explained, and it engenders a nuance, theoretical analysis of media transformations from the global south, which is always feeding on global north perspectives or epistemologies. Methodological contribution, the methodological fusion of ethnography and key informant interviews resulted in a framework that this study generated for assessing the efficacy of ePapers, and there is a publication to this. Empirically, this study has historicized ePapers. There's not been adequate studies on ePapers. I'm shy of saying that actually there are no studies in the global south about ePapers. But now, this study has historicized them and contributed empirical knowledge about ePapers. And practically, this paper has developed an ePaper business viability model that occasions the utility and materiality of ePapers, especially in the print media. This is the model. Because of time, I may not go through it, but it basically talks about the existing model and its challenges, and then the new model, which is inspired by astronomy, by space science in terms of components. There's one component which represents the role of the sun on Earth. There's another component which represents the moon and its role on Earth, representing the emerging technologies. The component the sun represents the content innovation, and then the syzygy in space science is when planetary beings align with Earth, be able to create life forms on Earth. So I'm saying that there is need for a marketing communication mix to ensure that the life of the ePaper exists, and subcomponents, advantages, and maybe during the question time, I'll be able to explain it. Going from this framework and empirical findings, future research should focus on ePapers as emerging distinct digital formats, not as replicas in the mediascape. And there are special formats that require scholarly attention. I also recommend academia and policy makers to focus on the digital divide in our society to be able to ensure that literacy increases for ePapers, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa. And this study was a qualitative study. Future research should focus on other approaches like mixed methodology or even quantitative to gain a broader understanding of this complex phenomena. Finally, future research should identify more digital platforms and social media sites where discussions about ePapers are taking place. We only found an online community called the WhatsApp channel, but the WhatsApp channel is not enough. It's not even interactive. Where are discussions about ePapers taking place to be able to spark and trigger this media industry that is happening? Moreover, there's the policy on e-governance. There's policy on digitization in the country. So ePapers become the platforms to communicate much needed information to spur our development. These are the papers I generated. The first paper is talking about a historical political economy narrative of the emergence of adoption of ePapers in Uganda. The second one is the framework for assessing the efficacy. The third one is about leveraging social media and ePapers for brand performance among universities. And then the upcoming one, whose abstract has been accepted by Center for Basic Research in Kampala, is talking about digitocracy, digital media, and the shaping of the 2026 Ugandan presidential elections. I thank the Almighty God for this moment. My supervisors, and everyone else, thank you very much. I'm sorry for the moment. I will go to that slide during my Thanksgiving speech.
No problem. You'll be given the opportunity to thank whoever you want to thank. Thank you very much for your presentation. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome our own Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University. You are very welcome, Professor. In the same vein, allow me to welcome Dr. Kakulu, the chairperson, Mwasa chairperson. And many other colleagues who have joined us both physically and online. At this juncture, allow me to invite the critical reader, Dr. Isaac Tibasima, to interact with the candidate.
Thank you, Dean, and for everyone here. And for Arinitwe, welcome to the club. I look forward to welcoming you to this side of the river. I'm going to start this with my thoughts about your work, and then we shall have a little conversation with each other about a few things I agree with, a few things I don't agree with, a few things I'm querying, and we'll see how this goes. But I'm sure you'll ace this, really sure. And congratulations upon getting this far. And to William, my boss at the press, well done, and Dr. Mbaine. So Mr. Rugyendo's thesis titled From Print to Digital Evolution, Adoption, and Contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan Press examines, using the new vision as a case, the history and adoption of ePapers in Ugandan press, drawing on technological determinism, social shaping of technology, and critical political economy. Mr. Rugyendo shows that the SAPs in the 1990s and the age of liberalization of economies were drivers to a more monetized press economy. It is no wonder that at the end of the study, he introduces what he calls the ePaper business viability model to show how ePapers can be sustained and how digital resilience can be achieved. Mr. Rugyendo's work is qualitative in nature, using digital ethnography, which you call netnography, and in-depth interviews as methods of inquiry. With the emergence of technology and digital netizens, he shows that ePapers create specific spaces for people to not only interact with the press on the digital space, but also aid ways of dissemination. In his content chapters, he begins with a historicization of Ugandan newspaper landscape, showing the contributions of SAPS and the neoliberal dispensation in Ugandan economy and business. He shows how the internet has affected newspaper dissemination and how traditional modes of communication have been challenged to go a step higher. Social media, traditional modes of communication have been challenged to go a step. Social media and power of real-time news, he shows, are competitors that newspapers have to deal with, and e-papers come in to fill the gap. He also argues that the COVID-19 pandemic gave a chance for more engagement on the digital space, allowing for democratization in the ways in which news is both produced and consumed in the media economy. He further examines how e-papers in Uganda have been adopted and the struggles that come with this adoption, like subscription, access to failure after payment transactions, and others. The e-paper has become a rich archive for research where consumers and the media houses are in continuous collaboration as the former support this adoption of the digital space. He also discusses digital transformation and examines the contribution of e-papers in the Ugandan press, highlighting readership increase, a broadening of accessibility options, and the democratization of information. Mr. Rugyendo then offers the EBVM model and explains how this is relevant for both Uganda and the region. Just before we go ahead, I hope that is what you did. Because if it's not what we did, then I have to stop this. But that's my thinking about your work. Okay. Now, in my reading, I find your thesis strong on the following levels. One, the contextualization of e-papers as a framework is done very well by the candidate. This is even further done in the chapter that deals with the evolution of e-papers in Uganda and worldwide. My problem, though, is there is a time when you said there is no work on e-papers in Africa, in the global south. I think Admire Mare will kill you for saying that. At least I'm sure of his work, so I know what I'm talking about. I like especially how the background to the study shows the mediascape of Uganda's newspaper business and how this fits within the broader framework of how the print and e-paper aspects work for the newspaper. The contextualization is well done, in my opinion. However, I wonder about the exclusion criteria because they are not well and clearly explained, which comes with a lot of issues in the work. On the whole, however, the background, in my opinion, is beautifully crafted. Mr. Rugyendo does a good job, and this I must commend you because this is something we all struggle with. A very good job with your theorization. I don't know how you worked with 3 theories, because if you dared me, I would never do that. But you do a very good job with theorization and show how these theories, for me, which was really important, how these theories intersect in the context of the study. The beauty about this clarity is that the theories and how they interact with the data later on is something you clearly are aware of within your study. Your methods are clear. And especially your use of digital ethnography, which you call ethnography. The use of in-depth interviews is clearly explained, and I see a lot of data that come out of these two methods. And in my opinion, your choice of methods is good. The findings go hand in hand with the objectives. I'm particularly glad that there is an attempt to build the work in a coherent manner and the use of the new vision as a springboard to the argument in the thesis. But this is something I'm again going to ask you about later on. Findings also cohere with the methodological and theoretical assumptions of the study. In each of these, the argument is clearly spelled out, especially the fact that technology has had a big part to play in the newspaper business and therefore cannot be ignored. The conclusions and recommendations draw from the study, and each of these is clearly explained and contextualized. I must commend the candidate for this. Perhaps one of the most important contributions for this study is the EBVM model. I like the fact that the candidate is aware of its strengths and limitations and how it can work in an environment like Uganda. Now, while those are the ideas I think are strong, I think there are things that you'll need to deal with. And these are things that we're going to have a little conversation about at some point. I'm still wondering why your abstract and the topic seem to have a mismatch. You say from print to digital, evolution, adoption, and contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan press. And then for some reason, your work deals with the new vision. We'll talk about that. There are issues with academic language at some points. There are actually points where you're so conversational and extremely casual in the way you're writing. And I think I've put some of them out. The trouble with me as a teacher of academic writing is that I get these things. But I want to also say this, I also struggle with these things. So don't worry about it. I still do not know, and we're going to talk about this. I still do not know if the new vision was a case or if your study was a case study design approach. And we'll talk about this later. I'll be interested in hearing more about this at some point because it feels like many media houses in your work were contacted, and yet you seem to only have data that deal with the new vision. But we'll talk about that. I also found your methodology's ethical considerations a bit problematic, especially where you contradict issues regarding anonymity. And then I see Robbie Muhumza and what's the other name? James Tumsime. And I know as a qualitative researcher, that's acceptable. But the problem is you say it up there and then you totally destroy it in your data findings. So we will talk about that also. Part of the rules of academic writing is that when you indent, you do not italicize, or else you are shouting. Okay? And so if you should work on your indentations, please change all that italicization to what is correct. You only italicize what is not English. And I didn't see a lot of that in your work. I'm going to say this because Professor Chikoma is here. It's important to follow the graduate hand. I do not understand, and we're going to talk about this, why your chapter 2 has a theoretical review and a literature review. We'll talk about that in a short while. And the reason I say this is that when you choose to do such a thing, it's important for you to justify the choices that you've made, okay? That's what makes you a sound academic person. But if you choose to go away, I'll give you an example, because in the literary world, when we write papers, there are things we do not put. So our reviewers keep telling us, we need a methodology section, we need this section, and we always argue that's not literary in nature. So the thing is, if you've made some choices, just justify your choices. And I found that at many points of your work, these choices are not justified. Okay. So I'll go ahead and interact with you on a few ideas on the basis of what is written in your thesis. My questions will be on each chapter, and I'll begin with your title, unfortunately. The reason for this is not to say that your work was not well done, but to show how it can be improved. Okay? And the examiners have passed you. I am sure that you put up a spirited fight on this. And my questions will be on everything that you've written in your work. But I promise you will do this. Now, I want to start from your topic, from print to digital evolution, adoption, and contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan press. And when you come to your abstract, I want you to listen to what you write. You say, this study addresses this gap by examining the case of New Vision and exploring drivers, challenges, and efficacy of ePapers in Uganda. Is that different from your topic, sir? Just asking.
Thank you very much, my quick reader. Yes, there's a thin line between the two, and I must admit that during the harsh moment when I was trying to submit this thesis, I crisscrossed the two different versions, but I promise to take care of this.
Okay. And then you say recommendations include further research on the digital divide, cultural, technological, and intersections, and more case studies. And again, I'm going to ask you about the case study bit because I struggle with your work on the basis of whether this is a case study or if you use the New Vision as a case. And maybe we could have that conversation because in my thinking, cases deal with specific subjects or units or entities that are being studied, right?
Yeah.
Case studies, on the other hand, are comprehensive research analysis of that unit. What exactly did you do in your work?
Thank you very much. When I was looking at this study, I looked at both situations. I did a case of New Vision. I did a case of New Vision, and I think this. No, I don't think this is just a matter of language, and that explains why I ended up looking at the other media in the same media scape, for example, for key informant interviews. But this was purely a case study design.
The trouble is that you don't say that in your work. And then the other trouble you have with that is you tell us you're dealing with ePapers in the Ugandan press. The trouble with your work then is that you foreground the New Vision. You see that?
Yes.
But also, in my opinion, this is not a case study design. In my opinion, you're using the New Vision as a case,
Yeah.
to explain the notion of ePapers in the Ugandan press. I want you to rethink that topic and probably bring up the idea of what your case is. Because short of that, if you ever brought that to me, if you ever send this to William to bring to me, I will shoot it down. And William will tell you why I'll shoot it down. That's one thing you want to think about. I have a bit of trouble with your introduction because your introduction starts with a beautiful anecdote, very beautiful, about Don Wanyama and all those things that he says. But then you have it running for a very long period of time instead of really saying what your study is about, what important aspects that your study is going to deal with are, and so many of those things. And so I want you to think about that introduction a little more.
Thank you.
You say the study utilizes an African context, Uganda. As a student of identity, I have a problem with an African context, because now I'll ask you, what is an African context, Mr. Deo? And does Uganda mean, no, do you want to say that Africa and Uganda are being looked at the same level? Because I find that a bit misleading. I don't know if you get the question.
Yes, I get it.
Okay.
You see, I'm looking at the broader question of global South communication theories.
The problem with that is that that's not what your work is dealing with, Deo. I don't know if you get the argument. Clarity. This is what I am dealing with. This is how I'm going to deal with it. This is what my findings show, and this is what my conclusion is. Clarity. So you're not looking at Africa. You're looking at Uganda. Yes. And in my opinion, you cannot get Uganda and Africa at the same level. You can draw Uganda out of Africa, but you cannot say the study utilizes an African context, because someone is going to read this and question whether Uganda is the only African context. But also the trouble with that, Deo, is going to be, if you say it's Uganda, is Uganda the only African country?
No.
You know also that there's a lot of work on ePapers done on Kenya, on South Africa. Of course, you said it's not there, but at least I know it's there.
In terms of the scope of my time scope, I have noticed that
doesn't matter.
Few.
It's Uganda, at least in Africa. I'm aware of Uganda. There's a big kind of study on stuff in Kenya and ePapers in Kenya, because that one is on another level compared to Uganda. And so it's important for you to be clear in the way you are stating these things.
Thank you.
And a lot more.
Thank you very much.
Now, you say additionally, technology is disrupting analog systems. I found that quite interesting for certain reasons. One of the reasons being technology, is it always a disruptor, or does it turn out to be a complement to certain things?
It depends on how you are looking at it. If you're looking at it from a technology deterministic view, it can phenomena.
Okay.
But if you look at it from, for example, the space perspective, or one of the components, which is the social shaping of technology, technology also in that context would come out in a co-creation process.
And this is where I ask you, what is technology?
Technology is a medium of of change, a medium, an enabler of change in a given phenomena.
Okay.
Yes.
So you talk about the different industrial revolutions in your work. Okay. You talk about first IR up to 4IR. We're moving into 5IR, whatever that means.
Yes.
And my thinking about your work would be that technology is not just a disruptor. Technology actually is a complement to traditional modes of media presence. And I was particularly impressed in the way you look at, I think it's called Nzewi, the guy who deals with West African traditional media.
Yes.
He talks of talking drums.
Yes.
I like that because I use it in my class when I'm talking about indigenous media. The thing about it, though, is that you want to think about, and I see that you do a little bit of it when you talk about the social media explosion and what that has done to traditional media of communication. But I think, and I could be wrong, but I think you need to look at technology as a complement to traditional modes of media presence, production, and consumption. And of course, when you talk of analog systems, again, you want to be careful why you call them analog systems. Because technology, like you say, as a medium of change, seems to bring up a change in these analog systems. But my question is, do the communities that work with those so-called analog systems see them that way? When we talked of the Stone Age, was it analog? You want to think about that. And also how in the decolonial framework, and I know I hate that word, but in the decolonial framework, how we are starting to question the way our technologies within Africa have been talked about. But also if you think about technologies of self, technologies of production, technologies of, if you go into Foucauldian studies, how these technologies then have made us the types of people that we are, that would be a good way of thinking through your work. Okay. So the threat of emerging technology, okay, that I've said can be contestable because of the landscape of consumption of news. I'm also aware of the idea of the digital as a bit troublesome because of how people receive news. And this is something I thought you could think about. Now, Professor Chikoma is here. Do we have any section in your thesis titled Background to the Problem?
Yes.
What does that mean, sir?
It means problematizing the problem.
Please explain that further, sir, because I'm now more confused.
What is informing the research gap that you are addressing?
Okay.
And that's where I'm coming from.
I'm sure that's not a background to the study, not a background to the problem. And you see, that's where you get trouble when you get to your problem statement. You know what happens to you? You bring literature back into your problem statement. That means you have not contextualized your study fully. I always tell students, the moment I see you bringing citations in your problem statement is the moment I know you're not clear up there. Because that should show me what is ideal and where the gap is that you'd like to fill. So that's something you want to think about in the way you're presenting your work. So you say, as viewership on the global conglomerates like the BBC, CNN, France 24, and MSNBC is declining, the same can be said about mainstream media in Africa, especially Uganda. This is the same way hotel chains are facing competition from Airbnb, and US African shopping malls and libraries are being undercut by Amazon Prime's one-day delivery. Meanwhile, this Amazon Prime, which is this? I just need to be sure, because I know Amazon Prime as video.
Yes.
Yes. What's this one-day delivery? My question about that was how these are related in the practice of the media, and maybe you want to think about that in the way you make the statement there. So this is something that I need you to answer. The first newspapers in Uganda, Mengo Notes, Uganda Notes, emerged around 1900, publishing in English. Later, the English Herald, founded in 1912, dominated until the 1950s. And then you say, while colonial laws restricted African media, the newspapers which emerged later, like Sekanyoli and Munyonyozi, would play roles in pre-independence struggles, highlighting issues like economic exploitation and land distribution. Why do you think this was the case within colonial Uganda? Why do you think that there was a restriction? And I'm asking this because I need you to probably tell me if you see in these restrictions a kind of relationship between colonial administration and the media. And do you see that continually happening in the way the state controls the media? And that's where, again, I have a problem with your choice of the New Vision, as I'll state later, because it's a media house owned by the state. And yet, you talk about democratization of information. And yet, recently someone said this, democracy dies in darkness. That was from the Monitor. And I want you to think about each one of these things and state control of the media and ask yourself, again, in the context of this colonial relationship with the media, what exactly is happening with the state and the media?
Thank you very much for that question. From colonial times, the contestation between the state and media has been one of a relationship that is a love-hate one, because media are seen, especially independent media, are seen as platforms for holding the powerful to account, and also as platforms for free expression, and also as platforms for enabling the wretched of the earth who have no voice and nobody to speak for them to speak. And those positions, those orientation, those ideologies usually clash with the state ideology. And that is why in one of the findings, when I talk about the contribution of ePapers in the Ugandan press, one of the key findings was about ePapers providing that digital shield to be able to circumvent state control, to circumvent state harassment of journalists, of media houses whose ideas they do not agree with. So usually that has been an ongoing continuum, and I see technology as the solution, or as the hope in terms of circumventing this age-old contestation between independent media and illiberal regimes, especially in the global south.
I don't want to talk about illegal regimes.
Illiberal, I said illiberal.
I still need my job. Now, my problem with that is that you're using a state-owned newspaper.
Yes, I use a state.
I don't know if you see any problem with that based on what you just told me.
Again, from where you are standing, is that even within the New Vision, let me probably describe it for you, the state of New Vision. The state of New Vision is 51% government owned, and 49 public. You and I, and we have different ideas. Recently, we just had an election where somebody got 71, another one 20 something, but that brought together have ownership in this print media house. But importantly, being the pioneer of ePapers in the country was an important case to look at. I didn't look at the other case because that was not the scope of my study. However, the mix brings in ownership issues. For example, how does the majority control of the state in New Vision determine content at the New Vision? Is New Vision self-censoring, for example, because of state control? That's what we are talking about. However, I will consider your concern.
Well, I'm again careful about that New Vision. I mean, your study shows a few things, but if you think about state-owned media and independent media, let me use maybe a literary word. In literature, we deal with what we call point of view. It's about who tells the story. and to what effect. Okay, so if you and I were talking about newspapers, I would probably tell you about my favorite paper. You would tell about your most favorite paper. So narratives are very interesting because narratives tell us where our loyalties lie. Okay, but also what narratives do is to remind us that there is always contamination in how stories are told. So if you've seen, I'm going to give you a very small, silly example from the recent. You remember the headline, 40 years of no change? You remember that? And then the next day,
Yes.
my changes. Okay? I don't know if you ever think about those contradictions and how, as a person that is reading an e-paper, I'm going to think about those contradictions, which are really created in 24 hours. Maybe I'll also use something else that recently happened. I don't know if you know about this. Yesterday, someone sent me a message and said, is it true Makerere has postponed graduation?
I also received it.
And I told someone, that would be so stupid of my boss because yesterday he told us the graduation is on such and such a day. The person who was asking me this is a journalist, and I'm not a journalist. So you see how, again, narratives are very interesting things. And so you want to ask yourself the question, what did this person at Capital FM want to say? You see that? It's quite important for you to think about state ownership and independent ownership and how these things then determine how the news, one, is told, but also how it is consumed. That's something that I think you need to think about.
Thank you very much.
When it comes to your statement of the problem, I don't know what the second paragraph in your statement of the problem is doing. I think, in my opinion, you need to remove it. I'll give you my ideas on this in this. And again, I thought that your statement of the problem is a bit verbose. So it would be nice if you made it crispy clear. What's the current state of research on newspaper evolution, e-newspaper evolution? What should be? It is important to think about carefully, rather think about this very carefully. And what's the gap? This could be methodological, theoretical, or conceptual. Ironically, you do this in your work, but in your statement of the problem, that clarity does not come through. And again, like I said, you work with the new vision, but then your main objective is to explore the evolution, adoption, and contribution of ePapers. That's something that you and your supervisors will have a discussion about. Now, you say interest is placed on the country's major ePaper, the new vision, which replicates its mother print edition. And I know that you talk about this later on in your work. How do we get to the argument that the new vision is the major ePaper in Uganda?
Thank you very much for that.
No, and you know why I'm asking you that? Because nowhere in your work do you mention how you get to that.
Thank you very much. I invoked extant literature, particularly from Ipsos. I think that must have been an omission which I need to take care of during the revision stage.
Okay. Your time scope you said was 10 years?
Yes, please.
May 2015?
Yes, please.
To June 2024. Even with my literary mathematics, that's not 10 years, sir. My comment here is that these are not 10 years. Additionally, the idea that fieldwork was completed in 24 is not scholarly justification enough. You say 2024 is the time when you completed your fieldwork, so that's the period you're looking at. I don't know why you decided to state it that way, but I cannot say that my PhD took this and this time because, well, I started at that time and ended at this time. I find that quite funny in the way you present it. Now, I want us to think about your geographical scope. You say the study focuses on Uganda, right? But I don't know if you notice that everything you say about Uganda here can be said about every other country in Africa. So why is Uganda important? What is distinct about Uganda's e-paper landscape? Yes, I want to hear that.
You just told me that there's been studies in the neighboring country like Kenya about ePaper.
No, I actually said that because you said there was no work.
I said there was inadequate work. Maybe that would have been a slip of
I'm asking this because you need to be clear about
Yes.
what makes Uganda distinct. It's not that I choose to do research in Uganda. Why Uganda?
What makes Uganda distinct?
Yes.
If you look at the anecdote of Don Wanyama, where I'm quoting him talking about a lost position at New Vision in 2024, occasioned by the rapidity of emerging technologies and also high costs of production that are affecting production of newspapers and loss of revenue in terms of advertising because of Google analytics and social media. It makes Uganda a special case to look at in terms of how um, newspapers are coping up, and also in terms of literature available to understand how ePapers are transforming the industry, and this I must admit I have found very inadequate literature about this, and I felt like this is a novel project. This is a novel area that would inform communication theory in Uganda.
I need to say something about that. Just because there is inadequate literature does not make it a novel project. What makes it a novel project is this is what they have done. I would like to extend it this way, or I would like to do this with that which they have done. Okay. It could be that I'm working with this theory. It could be that I'm working with different methods. It could be that I'm conceptualizing this differently. It doesn't mean it is new, but it is something that is extending studies that have been earlier done. This one I need to ask you, and like I said, I'm glad that Professor Chikoma is here. Why is your literature review and theoretical framework in the same chapter? Chapter 2 of your work is literature review and theoretical framework. Why are they bundled together, sir?
I bundled them together because a review of literature is conceptually a review of theoretical literature as well. But
please explain that. I'm confused now.
Because literature review and theory feed in terms of assumptions and evidence, and I fused it because because of my SPAFE framework. The idea is to see how literature is speaking to theory, and if it speaks to theory, then that helps to should be able to help the study traject better ahead. And but I'm aware of the handbook, whose clarity is not very clear about that. I felt that I should have actually separated them and created a different chapter.
You know, when you talk about the literature and theory interacting, you do that very well in a chapter that I have big problems with, unfortunately, called Discussion of Results. And I have a big problem with it because I don't know what that chapter, as we'll talk about later, is doing in a qualitative study, in my opinion. Okay? In my opinion, a theoretical framework is part of how you are conceptualizing your study. It fits in chapter 1. And I also don't know, because I've seen this with many people, I don't know why people review literature you're talking about the different industrial revolutions, and I found that really well done. If you ever get a chance, and I know that this is a very recent PhD, I've read it, so I know what is there. Teddy Nalwega's 2024 PhD thesis works with the industrial revolutions and how they work with service delivery in Uganda. And she begins with first IR within the Ugandan context. It could guide you in the way you're thinking about contextualizing the Industrial Revolution ages within the Ugandan context. That's something I just needed to say to you. Now, you said the Northern question, and this one amused me a lot. You said the Northern question emerged from the North-South division perpetuated by the colonial state. And I know that this is true, but it's also something that's questionable. Perpetuated by the colonial state. The colonial administration faced with peasant uprisings and worker strikes in 1945 and 49. I don't know if you've read work about the Northern question.
Yes, I've read Mandani. He's done some work there.
Have you written Sibambi's National Integration?
I'm sorry, I haven't.
It's one of the best books to help you understand the Northern question, the Karamoja question, and the big elephant in the room, the Buganda question, and why Uganda is having a lot of issues lately. If you could get that work, it would be nice to think. You don't have to read everything, but something to guide you on it. Now, you say that you're choosing the new vision because of what ABC has in 2019. I don't know if you know that that's what you wrote.
Yes.
ABC is Audit Bureau of Circulation, right?
Yes, please.
Yes. And you quote 2019 in 2025. And that's one of your reasons for choosing the new vision. 2019. Are there any new statistics from ABC?
Yes, there are new statistics. Which
did you just choose not to use them?
No, this was at the beginning of the study.
Well, studies change.
Yes, of course.
Yes, one of the troubles I'm having currently is that I have to change my thesis to book, and you don't know what I'm doing to that work. So
thank you for the guidance.
As your work grows, please remember that the people going to read your work are not 2019 folks. That is dinosaur stuff. It doesn't belong in the kind of work you're dealing with. Okay, sorry. I messed up something here. My biggest challenge with your literature review, and I don't know what you think about it, because I would be glad to hear your thoughts. My biggest challenge with your literature review is that while you have a section on the literature gaps, on the research gaps, you do not fully engage the literature. Now, you do something called a literature review, right? But the trouble with your literature review is that you simply state what people have said and you don't deeply engage with what people are saying. So what has been done differently and why? This could be theoretical, it could be conceptual, this could be methodological. It could also be contextual. I think there's a bit of disservice you do to your engagement with the literature, which would be something that you want to think about. Like I said, your theoretical framework, in my opinion, needs to go to chapter 1, but that's between you and your supervisors. I found it a very interesting framework. I find it clear, and especially how you use the theories. One of the things I enjoyed reading your theoretical framework is how you were able to show the intersections with the theories. I thought that was really, really well done. However, there is something that you say that I found not true, and probably I want you to tell me what you think about it. You say the intention of combining 3 perspectives was because relying on one theory increases the chances of a theoretical bias. Please explain that, sir.
For example, technology determinism is deterministic. It is that theory assumes that, like explained earlier, assumes that a unilinear shaping of systems, of phenomena, and yet, when dealing with a complex phenomenon like ePapers in the Ugandan press, understandings of agency, the role of agency in technology shaping society becomes very important. So relying on it would have denied the study those socio-cultural contexts, human contests, human technology contestations, and for me that would not have given a broader theoretical analysis or theoretical depth of the subject of the study.
You see, that is what I needed to see, not theoretical bias. You know why? Because I can write my paper with one theory. So you work with ethnography, right?
Yes, please.
And ethnography is part of ethnography, right? You know, it's a digital ethnography, so it's ethnography. So it deals with the issues of, say, the way people behave. It's about behavior, it's about customs, it's about attitudes, it's about many things. The thing I love with your work is that you say you had to immerse yourself in the community, which is beautiful. First thing I would like to ask, though, is for how long were you in that community?
For 3 months.
For 3 months.
But like I said, while I was explaining, because of the Data Protection Act,
Yeah.
I was not able to fully immerse and contextualize the interactions on the WhatsApp channel, which is why I am focusing largely on the feedback process on that WhatsApp channel, because technically it is also challenged, and that's one of the key findings that I have.
Do you state that as part of your methodological limitations? Because I didn't see that anywhere. I don't know if you.
I will take care of that.
The other thing is that you talk of an exploratory case study design, and again, this is why I asked: are you using a case or a case study design? The other thing I noticed about your methodology is I need to hear your thoughts on this. What's the difference between a design and an approach?
Well, an approach is the broader take on an issue or on a phenomenon, the orientation. But the design.
Did you say orientation?
Yes, the methodological orientation. You see, you have mixed methods, for example. I think we understand that, but in this case, the design is what shapes the trajectory of the study.
Okay.
Yes.
So what design did you use for this?
An exploratory case study design.
Is this a case study?
We have agreed that I need to.
Okay. Secondly,
you know that
you also know that ethnography is both design and method. You need to tease out those differences.
Yes.
Ethnography is both design and method, because ethnography is both design and method. So you want to be sure and clear about how you're thinking about these things, because I've asked the question: is ethnography a method? Is it a design? And how do you talk about that? I also do not know why you talk of quantitative methods in your work. Again, this goes back to clarity. If one of the things I tell students is, if you don't want to have holes poked into your work, don't say things that are not part of your work. Otherwise, we will question a few things. In my thinking, your research scope needs to go to chapter 1, but that is something you and your supervisors will deal with. Okay? And then you also say something, this one really got me thinking when it came to your methodology. So you say variables in qualitative studies can be understood as phenomena, concepts of factors, rather than being strictly labeled as independent or dependent. And you quote Cresswell. On the next page, you talk about variables which are the following. You talk about independent variables, dependent variables, intervening variables, moderating variables. My problem with that, Deo, is the moment you start talking of independent, dependent, intervening, moderating, you are changing your research approach into a quantitative one. You are actually bringing in a conceptual framework. But then your work is not MMR. You see that? And if your work is not MMR and it's not within a specific research paradigm, we are going to have issues with what you're stating here. The other thing I have issues with that is that qualitative variables are generally not measurable. And you state that very clearly. They are categorical, they are conceptual, they are thematic. Okay? And because you're dealing with behavior and beliefs and all that, I think it would be important for you to take away this whole idea of variables from your work. Please. Because for me, and I could be wrong, for me it doesn't make sense. And like I said, I could be wrong. I thought as I was reading this that you are forcing a conceptual framework onto a qualitative study. And yet qualitative studies are generally driven by theory. But again, that is something we could agree on or disagree on, and then see how to move on. Your data collection methods, I wonder, if you look at 3.8 and 3.4, I would be happy if you could merge the stuff that is in there, because I don't know why you repeat yourself in those different bits. So you say key informants were drawn from media houses such as the New Vision, Daily Monitor. The winner for me was when I saw Red Pepper. And I believe you know why.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, my question about that was, your work shows you worked with the New Vision. Why were these other media houses involved? Which you have explained. What do you say about your positionality, especially regarding the Red Pepper?
Thank you very much. Well, I during my presentation actually talked about it as one of the limitations, and I mitigated it. I mitigated it by maintaining objectivity and strictly maintaining the idea that this is a purely academic study. I knew there was a question of the fact that I own a newspaper which is in the same business as New Vision, but this study particularly is not investigating the performance of New Vision. It's simply talking about a phenomenon and using the case of New Vision to understand how this affects everyone in the industry. And I believe that findings should be aimed at not helping the New Vision to succeed, but the entire emerging ePaper industry in the country.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this in to you. What if you had done it at the Red Pepper?
I didn't do it.
No. I am not saying you didn't do it. That's why I said, what if you had done it at the Red Pepper?
Oh yes, I get your question, sir.
What would have happened?
Possibly I would have accessed more data about its reach in terms of numbers, and I would have more or less actually come up with the same results, but it will be hard to believe.
Okay, you know why I'm asking you this? In ethnographic studies, and I know that I'm one of those that struggle with this, we are generally told we cannot study our communities, generally. But recent ethnographic studies actually encourage us to conduct studies in our communities. Okay? Recent ethnographic studies. The reason being that, considering our ethics in research, we can actually find a way of staying objective, even within our communities. So I have done studies among my people. Why? Because theory guides me on how I am going to think about the field data. It's not my thinking, it's what the theory does. So I thought, because I saw somewhere where you talked about the fact that you're an entrepreneur with the red paper, and so you were scared, and so you had to use research assistants. I found that problematic for me as a researcher, because then it shows you are scared even of doing studies within something that is of great importance to you. So that's something you want to think about. That's why I said, okay, so what if you had done it in the red paper? What would have happened? Because I think positionality is you saying, I am the proprietor of this, okay? However, for me to be unbiased and to be objective, this is what guided the way I was thinking about the data. And no one is going to kill you for doing that. I can do studies on Makerere University. Yes, I work here, but you see, the truth is, whatever information I receive is information then that should be valid. It's not that I'm going to place my feelings and ideas in it, but it's valid data, and I should be able to work with that. Now, again, I know that people have made noise about me and this, but please, sampling is not qualitative language. Sampling is quantitative language. So the moment you talk about sampling, I want to see quantitative methods, which you don't use. We talk about selection. Ironically, though, for you, is that you actually talk about purposive selection in your work somewhere. You actually talk about selection of participants. Why don't you talk about sampling of participants? I found that very interesting. I want to say this because while these things might be similar, qualitative and quantitative languages are different. And I want you to be consistent in the way you are presenting your stuff. Okay, now, you also say something about to address existential biases, both the practicing media journalists and media co-owner of whatever. I employed reflexivity and positionality, and yeah, that's something that I've talked about. There's a comment in here. I want to really hear your answer on this. Two things, actually. You said you sought ethical clearance from Makerere University Research Ethics Committee. Deo, I need to know where that one is found. That one, I really need an answer.
Yes, well, it's fine in Makerere, but I think I might, I miswrote it.
Which research ethics committee did you go to?
Makerere University Research Ethics Committee.
There is one in social sciences. There's one at Kayes. There is one at IDI. There is one at health what? Health sciences.
The one in social sciences.
So which one did you go to? You know why? You know I'm asking you that question because plausible research also requires that you give us your approval numbers.
Yes, I will attach them.
You don't have your approval numbers here.
Maybe I need to explain what is causing that. There are circumstances that surrounded submission, and I think I should be able to attach in the final book.
Okay. Please, there is no Makerere University Research Ethics Committee. Be specific whether it is the Social Science Ethics Committee or it is Health Sciences Ethics Committee, and then please give us your approval numbers. And then you also talk about anonymity, and I don't know why then later on I see names in your study. And I understand that because as a qualitative researcher, that's what I do. Okay. But if you're choosing anonymity, I think it's important for you to say, for those who requested to be anonymous, I was anonymous. For those who were agreeable that their names be used, I used their names. It's still an ethical consideration.
Yes.
I was also quite impressed with this idea of vulnerable populations. So who are these vulnerable populations and why were they important for your study?
As participants?
Yep, that's what you have in your work, sir.
Oh.
You actually say, while the study did not anticipate the inclusion of minors, special consideration was given to the protection of vulnerable members of society. And then you do something that I am sorry, Professor Natkunda will shout at you for. Vulnerable members of society, including women.
I think that was a slip of the computer.
You
But
say
I meant mention the underaged. That's what I meant.
vulnerable members of society, including women and individuals with disability. I hope you were not writing this to fill the pages, because I know we do that.
Yes.
But please, this narrative of women being vulnerable,
Okay, it's a stereotype, but which I can take care of.
academics cannot be stereotypical, sir. So with liberal, we're about to finish, so don't worry. We're already in your findings. So you say with liberalization, especially of the telecom sector in the mid-1990s, came the adoption of the internet, which is very fine. The internet is an important infrastructure in the transition of the press from print to digital formats and a critical driver in understanding print media adaptation to digital formats such as e-papers. This argument, and this is for me, this argument in light of theory makes a lot of sense, okay? However, are you suggesting that liberalization enabled the internet boom or its adoption? Is that what you're suggesting? Considering UTL as a service provider, how did the liberalization of communication in the communication era lead to this adoption? And why am I saying this? When I was doing my MA here, we had a very small room in the library with UTL internet. And this has changed over time because now you can access internet in the whole library. How did newspapers work with this change? But also, the New Vision is a government newspaper. Would the government not aid this internet and its use?
I'm looking at it. Thank you very much for that question. I'm looking at it from the structural point of view, actually from the political economic imperative point of view, where the liberalization opened the space to access new technologies and also technologies coming into the market, like for example, New Vision and Celtel at that time, which is now Airtel, and their internet provisions that previously were not available, and so newspapers across the board. I was trying to explain the evolution, what is the journey, what takes us to what we are seeing right now, what's been the chronology, what's been the trajectory, and that historization, that backgrounding becomes resonate to the liberalization policy of the 1990s.
Okay.
Yes.
I wish you could do that the way you've said it in your work. You also, this one really amazed me, COVID-19. This one we will have a little conversation. You're saying COVID-19 was the takeoff stage, right? Of the e-paper business.
Yes.
You seem to be suggesting that prior to COVID-19, the e-paper business was static?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
The takeoff took 5 years based on the timing of your study. If we go into economic
Yes.
development,
Yes.
we know the takeoff stage. And then okay, let me not go down that road. I'll get into trouble. So takeoff stage took 5 years, right? Based on the timing of your study. And if so,
yeah, the 5 years was the COVID-19 time.
Okay, and that's when the takeoff.
That's 5 years from 2015 when the first ePaper appears on the scene.
Okay.
In the country.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you're saying, so if so, what were the prior COVID-19? So what was there prior to COVID-19 that the epidemic triggered?
There was affinity to print media, to the print versions, and lukewarm response to the ePaper version. Actually, it was not performing very well from the findings between 2014 and 2015 and 2019, largely because of technical issues. The platform was not fully developed, and so users were being turned away because of the seamless, slow engagement with the platform. But when COVID-19 struck and with the shutdowns, it became difficult for readers to actually even touch a newspaper because of the circulatory dynamics of newspapers. The thinking at that time in the political structure was that even newspapers a potential spread. So, I mean, spreaders of COVID-19. So people opted. This was an opportunity. People opted for electronic means of survival, and that's how ePaper, the ePaper adoption got triggered with the announcement by New Vision and even Daily Monitor actually announcing free subscription. And
behavior, and then show me how those different behavior are changing over time with the imprint of the ePaper, because you don't do that at all in your work. Avenue for Youth Agitation. I don't know why I don't want to believe this. And I don't want to believe it because I do a lot of work on youth activism and agitation. And I always look at it based on social media spaces. Are we sure that the ePaper has that chance to allow for that agitation, especially if we are talking about the new vision?
to resonate to the entire industry, because using the new vision as just a case is to understand, is to underscore the potential of the ePaper as a platform for holding the powerful to account, and also agitation, and its utility as a platform that has the capacity or the potential to break constraining barriers in terms of circulation. So it is quite possible that the findings actually illuminate that the ePaper, because first of all, you need to understand the nature of a print newspaper or a print press. They're very difficult to access physically, and even transport, and even circulate. And they are vulnerable to state interruptions. I have been a victim of that. I'm sure you know that. And so, but the ePaper model circumvents that. And it means that if the ePapers are seen as a distinct platform, not just as replicas of the printed version, then it is possible for them to carry newer content that actually speaks to what you're saying, and be able to circulate without any restrictions.
Okay. On September 2 at 07:42 a.m., I don't know which September 2, I don't know which year, but that's okay. I don't know why you don't have years.
2024.
A user asked how to subscribe for ePapers, a question that was repeated later that same day at 2:03 p.m. This repetition within a short time frame highlights the lack of accessible, self-explanatory instructions on the platform. Even when guidance was provided, confusion often persisted. If we go into theory, what does this say about accessibility and online internet knowledge? But also, for you as a researcher, do you think the simple is always simple? And in what ways does the confusion alienate some of the digital users? I'm interested in this repetition because, again, it goes back to observed behavior on the platform, which goes back to your methodology, but also something that helps you to think about that adoption, which you talk about in your work. My question then is, what determines the simplicity of what the ePaper is doing? But also in this way, is there a kind of alienation of digital users? Does it become sometimes difficult to do certain things on the ePaper platform?
Yes, I think this comes with digital literacy.
Okay.
And access.
Okay.
And also the stability of the internet itself.
Okay. Now, you have this thing they call democratization of information. Can the new vision really, in all honesty, provide for us that kind of platform where information is democratized.
Yes.
And you're safe.
New Vision New Vision.
Yes.
Maybe which information? Government information or pro-government information?
It is information.
Information, yes.
Yes.
The democratization here is in terms of delivery and access.
Okay.
You saw in one of the slides, one of the participants was talking about his village in Kanungu and his ability, which is so remote, his area, very remote, and his ability to access information via his phone because of the ePaper model. Because the print version is static, it is sometimes geographically difficult to access and even logistically to transport and circulate, even to produce, because of the rising costs of production and newsprint, especially newsprint and inks. And so therefore, I see, the study sees this ePaper platform as an opportunity for newspapers to ensure that everybody, as long as they're digitally literate and the digital divide is shrinking, so information that comes out of a paper like New Vision is able to reach a broader audience.
Okay.
Yes.
So whose democratization are we talking about here?
The political economy structures within the New Vision.
Okay.
Ensuring that democratization in terms of access takes place. Because it's a decision issue here.
In essence, democratization is not as democratic as it appears to be.
Well,
because there are structures that must still be followed.
Yes, there are structures that must still enable that, but agency is important in this
So
case.
it is still an oppressive democratic process.
Yes, I talked about the digital enclaves.
Okay.
Those who can be able to access appear to be a digital enclave on its own, some elite digital enclave, because they can access internet and cheap data or they can even pay for it.
I'd be very interested if you thought about the ironies around this thing you call democratization. It's very interesting stuff. I have a few questions left. His framing of ePapers as localized digital platforms, and then I think I ask, no, I think this is okay. You do a good job in your chapters that deal with findings. Again, like I said, I do not know why you have chapter 7 in your work. I would be glad, but this is really up to you. I would be glad if you moved everything here within the discussions in the different chapters.
Maybe I need to explain this.
Yeah.
It's good the Vice Chancellor is here. And Professor Chikoma, the handbook of Makerere University separates findings from the discussion chapter. So it's a structural issue.
I understand that.
Or a guidebook issue.
I do understand that extremely well, sir. Okay? But I'll also say this. You are a humanities scholar. And I know Professor Chikoma will agree with me on this. You are a humanities And how does your theoretical framework help you to think through this global not even citizenship, this global netizenship, and how we have decided to think about netizens on all these different digital platforms? That's one question.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. My theory framework helps to shape, to understand the understanding of an emerging society on the web or virtually, and of a new phenomena. For example, in this case, when you talk about borders, but we talk about physical borders in terms of what existing in the political economy, but also that technology, once technology fuses with with the structures, there is a new thesis. There is a new thesis, and that thesis is eclectic and requires a broader understanding in terms of theory and methodology.
Okay. Final question. If you were to do this work again, yes, if you were to do this work again, what would you?
Different online communities at New Vision. One is their Twitter handle, and the other one is their Facebook page, which is not quite active because of the restrictions. And the only one that appeared to fit into a ethnographic protocol was the WhatsApp channel. And it explains, if you look at the book, you'll see that channel and how it looks like.
I am asking
Yes.
because I failed to get the connection between this group and then the ePapers. So it's not clear to me whether those that contribute to this channel are subscribers to the ePaper. They actually consume the ePaper. All these people that engage with the ePaper in other, ways of engaging online. So I kept wondering how this really connects with the ePaper.
Maybe if I could answer that,
clear to me.
if I could answer that, the reason for adopting ethnography was to interrogate the second objective, which is adoption of ePapers. And adoption is about how readers of the ePaper are living with it, if I could use that kind of word. And so it is important that it was important for me to learn from the users on that channel to understand the dynamics, the intricacies, the way the channel works, not the platform is working. How is it working for the New Vision in order to inform the rest of the print media industry? What is happening? That's why in the findings you find things like access issues, payment inquiries, technical glitches, but also subscription processes, and also how the humanistic element at the New Vision is helping the technology to improve, the technology itself to improve. The channel was very important for that in terms of understanding how the technology of the ePaper is making a contribution to the survival of this print platform that is facing a polycrisis.
Yes, so maybe my last on that would be, why wasn't the WhatsApp channel the main focus of the study then?
Why? Beg your pardon?
Why wasn't this channel the main focus of the study then?
Because I did a case of New Vision and then used the the key informant interviews to tackle, to pick views from the rest of the industry players beyond New Vision. Maybe if I focused on the real case study dynamic, then it would focus on that, and then I wouldn't need to look for key informant interviews.
Okay, thank you very much. My last question is, I see your study is anchored within the framework of media viability, with the opening quote from the CEO of New Vision, Don Wanyama, indicating how they have made losses. And I believe that by conducting this study, you also wanted to tell us how the ePapers can make a contribution to media viability.
Yeah.
But when I listened to your presentation and also reading through your work, I seem to miss the concept of ePapers. It is not elaborated anywhere. We don't know how they are structured. We don't know how they are working. We don't even know how they are contributing to the operations of the New Vision.
No, if you look at the findings on objective 3, which is the contribution of ePapers, the findings actually show that maybe they may not be very adequate. Even the conceptualization is also there, especially at the end of chapter 2, where even the examiners have advised me to shift it to the background chapter. And in the presentation, I showed the conceptualization of ePapers and how they are circulated, okay, and how they contribute and the challenges they are facing. Being an exploratory study, that was able to illuminate at what stage these papers and how do they look like, because there is limited literature about their nature, about their utility and materiality.
Yes, and I want to follow up on that, because if you say there is limited literature, then your study really comes in at the right time to really give us literature about ePapers. But if you have not really given us a deep analysis of what this concept is, and especially in relation to the new vision that you have fronted, the findings feel a bit abstract if they are not hinged on particular operations and examples.
First of all, this is an emerging technology which keeps evolving, and I trust that if I'm lucky and I pass this exam, it will be important. It will be important to extend the study to interrogate more about the nature of these adaptations. For example, one of the key findings shows that they are, in terms of conceptualization, they are distinct. You know, the literature insists that they are replicas, but in terms of operation, in terms of their contribution, they seem to be distinct adaptations. And that means that it calls for further studies, for further research into this. You also talked about the media viability element within this study. Yes, objective 4 was about proposing a business viability model for ePapers. How can they work better beyond what they are contributing right now? And the literature, together with the findings, have informed that model, and which also has its own limitations, and it's a work in progress. And I intend to focus it just beyond the publication, and maybe work with Macrif to see how this model would be strengthened to what's the word I can use, to make the industry more vibrant. Otherwise, if you don't do this, then this department of journalism and communication will be no more.
Okay, my very last one is on the theory. as you were engaging with Dr. Isaac.
Maybe that was set a bit of ripples. What I'm talking about is that if media, print media, and their digital adaptations are not made viable, there could be no jobs for journalists.
We can have a further discussion on that, because really, as you know, from the evolution of media, print came, radio came, print stayed, you know, TV came, radio and print stayed.
Yes, the Bible and
Now we are.
The Bible and the Quran are still the highest selling book.
Exactly. So, yes, my very last one is about your theoretical framework, where it has been said that you did a lot of good work on merging the three key theories. My question is based on the background that under media studies, we are now in the liberalization paradigm, away from the modernization paradigm, where we, under modernization, we think that the media is all powerful and it is a tool that can effect change. And therefore, that's where we have theories like technology determinism. So you are doing a study that is under the liberalization. So I don't know why I find the theory of technological determinism a bit redundant in regards to your study. What would you say?
I wouldn't think it's redundant, because still, under the liberalization paradigm, technologies are assumed to be deterministic. That argument has not gone away. And that's why the social shaping of technology theory criticizes technology determinism, but it does not negate it. It doesn't negate it. And so the social shaping of technology speaks to the idea of liberalization paradigm, that structural forces, technological forces cannot thrive without the human agency. And that is the whole idea about liberalization paradigm.
Yes, but particularly to your study, and if we make a reference to the findings, how does technological determinism apply?
It applies at the point where internet technology was responsible for the evolution in the early 1990s, for the evolution of print media and their transformation into digital platforms. That's why even my topic talks about from print to digital. That journey from print to digital has elements of technological determinism. What is shaping the new digital platforms? What is shaping them? There is technology, but also technology alone is not sufficient, and that is why I end up talking about theoretical cross-pollination to gain a deeper theoretical depth about these transformations over the last probably 20 to 30 years.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, Fred, for that beautiful interaction. Now, for the rest of the panelists, I'm going to give you 2.5 minutes to interact with a student. Yeah, I will now call upon Dr. Sarah Namusoga to interact with the candidate.
Okay, hello, Rugyendo, and congratulations
Thank
on
you very much.
having this part.
Thank you.
2.5 minutes. So, first, second, Fred has talked about, Dr. Kakoza has talked about conceptualizing ePapers. I have the same concern around that, but you said you'll handle that or you address it, so that's okay. I think that you should have problematized ePapers a bit more. The other thing that I need to point out is about adoption, which is your second objective. And I'd like to know how exactly you describe adoption. And from that, ask, have ePapers been adopted in Uganda at least? By who? How do we know? And therefore, how do we measure contribution? The last one regards ethnography. And you say that ethnography is ethnography on the internet. There's literature that actually argues against that kind of conceptualization of ethnography. So I think that you might need to pay attention to that. And whereas it's a beautiful thing to say, just at least show that you're aware of those contestations. I assume that ethnography was applied to the second objective on adoption, and you confirmed that earlier. And one of the key things about ethnography is observation. So I was wondering, what exactly were you observing? You say you observed the WhatsApp channel. I think that I also find a disconnect between the channel and the ePaper. I've just been looking at the channel, and yes, it has so many subscribers. It also immediately under where it describes what it's about, it says you can access the ePaper here. But I would like to reiterate the question, that is that channel dedicated to only ePaper business? And if not, then we might need to see exactly how it was attached to your ethnography, and then to observing the uptake of the ePaper.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for being to the point. I hope Dr. Rugyendo has taken note of. I now call upon Dr. Levis Mugumya to interact with the candidate.
Thank you very much, Chair of this Viva. Good morning, Mr. Rugyendo.
Good morning, sir.
How are you?
I am anxious.
Thank you. I would like to congratulate you upon reaching this milestone. I think it hasn't been easy, and you are getting closer to coming this side. That's why, there is this table, and for us, we sit, this side. I'm not going to ask you very difficult questions, just some questions, to make you land safely. In your paragraphs that start your dissertation or your thesis, there is this word you have used, polycrisis. And I think when you are presenting, you also use that word, polycrisis. But you do not go in depth, to define what it is, to conceptualize what it is, and how this polycrisis notion underpins your study, your motivation in terms, of the economic, environmental, and geopolitical, shocks. And I think that should be the starting point. Even when you said that there was COVID, and then that was the spark of the ePaper. But I think even before that, there were certain economic, environmental, and geopolitical shocks that underpinned the start of these ePapers. And I think you need to amplify that as you start this thesis. Secondly, you also start with that anecdote of Mr. Don Wanyama. And I don't know why you chose that, because this is in 2024 when you are already into your study. And yet New Vision had experienced some challenges as far as circulation and sale of papers long before that. I think some time back, Mr. Kaushenga, at one of the annual general meetings, mentioned this, and that's why they were moving into digitization. So I don't know why you start with that, not even going back, and yet this information is available. I had wanted you also to conceptualize, as Dr. Kakoza said, that notion of ePaper. I hope you will do that. You are trying to justify that, but I think there isn't sufficient information in the book that tells us what that ePaper is, because in Uganda, of course, you know, there are other studies that have been done on ePapers, but this is some reference at in future to get information about this ePaper, so don't miss that chance. Mr. Rugyendo, I understand that you are a business manager at the Red Paper. I think you are still a.
Yes, please.
So this position, and in relation to your objective number 4 about proposing a viable business model, how do they connect?
One, Red Paper is also part of the industry. It's not an isolated or an island somewhere, and which also faces the same existential threats that face the rest of the players in the industry. And the point is that viability is about commercialization, is about revenues, and is about solving the polycrisis. The polycrisis being a convergence of, like explained, of reduced revenues in terms of advertising, in terms of circulation. And so this ePaper business viability model has components that speak to a marketing communication mix, which I realize was in one of the findings, it was missing at New Vision, and explained why the ePaper growth at New Vision is
you
a
don't
slow
need
motion.
to go much into that, but I thought that would also, you know, would have been one of your motivation that led you not to do this research. And I don't find that, you know, in your study. And I think this is very important, because I also gather that Red Paper experienced this polycrisis. And I think, you know, you had reduced sales in terms, you know, of the hard papers you're selling, and somehow you had, you know, to do something. You talk about, I think I can go back, you know, to your title. Dr. Isaac had talked about this one, from print to digital. And when we go into your literature review, into your findings, indeed, we can see this historicization that you talked about. You go back to when newspapers, you know, started in this country and how, you know, they evolved. But I think I miss the historicization of the ePapers, especially, you know, at New Vision. So when did this start, and what are some of these stages that has gone through up to the present? That one is not there in your work, and I think you need to look into that. Now, finally, when we look at your findings, you talk about that from New Vision, one of the informants talked about people who read the ePaper on daily basis, and you mentioned 1,000, 2,000 readers. And you have talked about, you know, the contribution of ePaper. You talk about, you know, is it broadening or is it increasing the readership? Maybe you can answer that first.
It is both ways.
So
increasing readership in terms of the existing readership of the print press, from the assumption that ePapers are replicas of the print press. So they become an extended, broadening readership in this case is about the new vision being able, okay, as a case of the different players, being able to reach beyond physical borders, to reach the unserved who probably can access internet, but then, but because of their geographical location, are not able to access the print copy itself, and that is broadening.
thank you very much. Finally, given what is going on in terms of technology and what you have researched, what do you think is the future of the e-papers and the newspaper industry in Uganda?
Thank you very much. From time immemorial, when around 6000 BC, when the first newspaper appeared, called Acta Diurna in Rome, the technology has been at the center of reinventing the newspaper industry. From that time, then you have the first industrial revolution and the invention of the printing press, which increased the publication, the number of Bibles at that time. And eventually these presses and their technologies improved to now get newspapers go beyond the small towns in Europe, in Germany, to start spreading across because of the railway, because of the train and all this other stuff. So along the different epochs, technology has evolved to determine the shape of the newspaper industry. Now we are at that age where technology is reinventing the print version of the newspaper into a digital format to be able to square up with the disruptive and rapid growing alternative platforms like social media. So the future, I think the future is bright in terms of the fact that quality journalism, which is associated with legacy media, has a place in the digital space, So there was this notion that social media is killing newspapers. I don't think so, because with the adoption of e-papers and continued, and from the idea of the social shaping of technology, the human agency in the development and utility of the e-paper model will perhaps improve it from the way it is. Probably it becomes, in the future, you might find an e-paper that looks like a smartphone. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you very much. I think those, were really easy questions for you.
They are not easy.
Maybe finally, Mr. Rugyendo, of course, I know you are.
They were landmines.
Yeah, of course, you are coming from the media industry, and Dr. Isaac talked about this earlier on. You need to go back. At times, you make, casual statements which are not justified. So I have pointed out some of these, and you receive, the e-copy, and bonne chance.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Levis. And finally, I call upon Dr. Gilbert Gumushabe to interact with the candidate. 1.5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dr. Rugyendo, in the making, not yet, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
I wish to congratulate you so far. I read your work, and most of the things have been pointed out, but you have really done very good work.
Thank you very much.
That aside, definitely 1.5 minutes may be a very short time, but I will try. The good thing is that most of the issues I was to raise have been raised. And therefore, I will promise that after here, I will share with you the e-copy where they have been tracked. But notably is that one, expand on your key terms. Define them. But there are many And when we talk of definition of key terms, it is according to how we have used them in your research, not necessarily how they are used generally. So you have to attend to that one. There are issues on methodology, especially about what differentiating between research approach and research design. I've pointed them out very clearly, and you will be able to benefit from them if you so wish. But there are areas I would want to have some interaction. One, I will start with an analogy. Around 1999, I had visited a big person, and one prominent journalist went there, and he had a story about him. A very truthful story, very truthful. And he said, I'm ready to print it because in journalism, we must tell the truth. So he asked him, if you found your mother being raped, would you report? The person said, no, but you are reporting the truth, and that is true. How about if another reporter reported the truth about your mother being raped? He said, definitely, I wouldn't want, but you are reporting the truth. So he said, when you are reporting, you have to be responsible and have responsible journalism. It leads me to the question of you are page 299. You may not need to go there, but it talks about the e-media and e-papers breaking beyond borders and also breaking beyond censorship and being able to report unrestricted. And you go ahead to recommend government that they should reduce on restriction. And with the current proliferation of newspapers, stories are simply reported without looking at their impact on the consumers, impact on the affected people. Don't you think out of this, we would also need to ensure that government regulates on response on how journalism is practiced so that we have responsible journalism? What do you think about that?
Yes, in one of the thank you very much, Doctor, for that question. One of the recommendations, actually, I am for policy. I'm talking about a co-regulation regime where journalists and the state co-create a media environment, and this also speaks to my socio-technical political economy framework. You have the structures, you have the regulations, but you have the human consumption of information, but also you have the idea, the situation where journalists acquire their job, because you've heard of these cliches about journalism not being a crime. Journalism and reportage are criminalized by individual state actors, not by the constitution. And that to me requires technology to enable that to happen and to quicken it, to blur the gaps between the two forces. And I think I would, yes, continue to recommend that we need to move. Somebody talked about the liberalization paradigm, the postmodern paradigm. We must now move beyond the deterministic view of the state towards media and have a co-regulation or a co-creation environment. That's why there is this constant clash between journalists and the military, between the journalists and the state, between there was a true story which I don't want to talk about that took me into trouble because somebody claimed that the story was going to lead to a fight between two countries, and that to me is because we have silos in terms of media management and media state relations. So we must move the paradigm towards that.
Yeah, it wasn't well reflected. Maybe we shall sit together and
Yeah.
see how you can package it very well.
Yes.
So that because your thesis will be a reference for policy.
Yes.
PhD is something of great substance. The second one is on the profits that the New Vision made of 500 million. I'm wondering whether it was a celebration because apparently it leads to some loss of jobs, possibly. I don't know whether they looked at what was the gross income before and the gross income now, considering that many had been laid off, which affects the profession of journalism. That one you may not need to respond to that one.
I need to respond to that.
Okay.
And admit that actually it's the question of the language there. This should have been gross income. What the ePaper version in 2023 grossed across the year.
Yes. And now the last one, to be brief. In your research, where you give conclusions, but I want you to ensure that you refer to your specific objectives. So try to align them. Okay, that's an observation. You don't need to respond. You just align that. But from your research, you talked about the Department of Journalism with the ePaper. I had read throughout, I didn't see you recommending about training of the next generation of journalists, because from your research, we seem to be moving away from the traditional newspapers, or they will have to remain limited into e-papers, an indication that it requires further training. You notice that there is no structure of an e-paper. As of now, it could be there, but it is the reporter. The reporter is not even there. It is the newspaper itself. And going by that, at times there is a lot of misinformation. Like yesterday, they said on an online, when they were releasing the bodies in Ukraine and Russia, they said there is massive death on both sides, but Ukraine was receiving 1,000 bodies and Russia receiving 38. So such a reporting is also a bit tricky. Now, I would expect that you have to make a recommendation based on your research on what the training of the next generation of journalists should be.
Yes. Yes, I agree to that, which I'll take care of in the recommendations. And yes, indeed, the rapidity of social media is occasioning rapid reporting. And also AI, for example, I think there's a robot journalist in China. I forget her name. I think she's Anna or something, who writes 8,000 stories in 1 month. So that's the futuristic journalism that should inform our different, not just the journalism department here, but journalism departments across the global south.
Thank you. Thank you, indeed.
Thank you very much, all the panelists, for engaging with the candidate. I now give an opportunity to the general public to ask at least 1 or 2 questions. Yes. Dr. Aisha? Okay. Yeah. Can you come up here? The second one. The second person willing to ask? Yes. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I was asked if I'm very public, and I said that is exactly why I sat behind there. Rugyendo, I want to congratulate you having come this far.
Thank you, Doctor.
And again, I want to be like my colleague, Dr. Mugumya, to give you a question, fortify your soft landing that Dr. Mugumya initiated. I was very, very interested in your interaction with Isaac. And my interest was drawn to this issue of you studying Uganda as an African case or as an African context. And I kept wondering towards the end of the discussion on how does the Ugandan experience of ePapers in terms of evolution, adoption, and contribution differ to that, differ from that of the rest of East Africa or Africa, and how do those differences impact on practice and the broader media industry? Thank you very much.
My brother Arinaitwe, you'll first receive my disclaimer that many of the people are critiquing you are academicians. I'm not one of them, but I want to congratulate you upon this milestone because I have personally made stuck at an MA for the last 10 years. So you have already moved a step. So my question is of consumer interest. You'll find where to fit it. Like you have said that you have started making a contribution, the body of literature in this area of the ePapers. We are interested in also one of the challenges. Like you said, the aspiration is that the ePapers become as structured or as important as a traditional media, what we call the traditional media. And you know that one of the reasons you talk about theirs, you talk about crossing borders and all those advantages. I believe that I see limited coverage on the challenges, one of them being regulation. I'm only requesting that I don't know whether it's not part of your scope, but somewhere you help us as a consumer now of the information, the tests you are doing, not as an academician or lecturer or so, but as a consumer, if possible. Help us somewhere and relate this evolution, the adoption and contribution of ePaper somewhere to the challenges of regulating that same thing, sir. Thank you very much.
Anyone online who would like to ask Rugyendo? Let's have the last person, Professor Edith Natunda.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, Rugyendo.
Professor.
You very well know that I'm one of your biggest fans.
Thank you very much.
But you also know that I'm a real down-to-earth follower in terms of technology. And today, as I was preparing to come to this PhD, one of your admirers, Professor Tayeebwa, said, ask this question for me. That he knows you've done your work and you had your scope, but given that technology determinism was one of your theories, what would you say about the prevalence and the interference of artificial intelligence in the area of ePapers?
Thank you very much, Prof. Rugyendo, you can respond to those three.
Thank you very much. Let me start with the last one, Professor Natunda. Yes, Professor Tokodri, I also admire him because I followed personally and meticulously his journey of the now the Kayola bus. I was always in his office, learning. AI in this context is an emerging technology. Like how the print press revolutionized newspapers and they were able to reach farthest ends the train, the railway, then the computer, and then the internet. And now we have AI in the era. In my proposed model, there is the question of embracing and adoption of emerging technologies to trigger this ePaper forward, which also actually answers my brother Muyanga's other question. No, I think he talked about it, but it was not a question. How do we make these ePapers, reach or get known or get embraced and become a lived culture? It's not, that's why, for example, in one of the findings, the access issues, their onboarding issues, particularly the do-it-yourself protocols, because the culture is still a problem. And in newsrooms like Observer and even Daily Monitor and New Vision, around 2018 there was that, 2015 there was that debate, that contestation between one group that believed in the sanctity and survival of the print press. But there was the other group which says there is a new emerging technology that must propel this print forward and probably now take it to Kanungu, which was a difficult area to reach. So this is the same thing. Now AI is, I look at it as an opportunity to now, one, increase literacy about ePapers, but so importantly, enable ePapers to actually create more revenue in terms of generating metrics, generating even content, and promoting, making the ePapers more interactive, because there is that challenge. They are not interactive. They are not fluid. They need to be fluid as their counterparts, the online only news outlets. That will further was print press. And then there was the antithesis, which is the technology, the alternative platforms. And now the thesis, the synthesis now is the dual model, is the hybrid model, which is taking care of both the print and the ePaper. But the AI becomes a technologically deterministic opportunity to propel the ePaper forward. No, it's not there. It's not there, I admit. I will put it, I'll consider it. Simon Uyanga, regulation challenges. The only way I can answer this briefly is that from this study, after taking care of all the comments and the reactions, it is going to become important to develop a policy brief on this. To help both journalism and state media relations. My sister, Dr. Aisha, how does the adoption of ePapers different from other contexts? The literature I've read around this keeps showing a deterministic, so therefore the internet and there is a computer, and therefore, ePapers emerge. But in our context, how this has been different is maybe in terms of the timeline, and the timeline has shown the historicization, and in that historicization, there are context-specific triggers. For example, how the policy, the representation policy in Uganda played out in terms of freeing up the market. And you recall that Uganda was really praised for that, for being a champion of free market economies. Also in terms of adoption, you realize in Uganda the difference is that the slow adoption because of the digital divide, because of the digital literacy rates which are very, very low, and also the lethargy on the part of the state to look at technologies and new media as opportunities. They look at them as threats, and that is slowing down this adoption. Maybe AI will help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I see a hand. Mr. Masiko, ask your question. Be brief. We are running very late.
Okay, thanks a lot, Doctor. Good morning to everybody and the brains in the room. My simple question is not so much to the candidate, whom I congratulating for this milestone, but it's to the general thinkers in the room. How do we reconcile capitalism and journalism in the field of media? A company owning a newspaper, what goes first? Is it the editorial or the marketing priorities? We have the BBC as a media house. It's respected, it's in the Ivy League, but as a business, it's a loss maker. So in our context here in Uganda and the emerging world, how do we reconcile the two? It's a general question to the brains in the house.
Thank you very much. Would you like to answer that briefly?
Well, he says the brain is in the house. I don't know whether I've already been certified.
Maybe
Yes, maybe I don't know how it can be. I wish this. By the way, this topic, that question is something I've spoken about many times regarding the political economy of media. Yes, historically, media were public service entities or mediums or enablers or channels. But because of capitalism, media changed and they became businesses. Definitely, that's like he's saying. For example, now, let me if I use an example of Daily Monitor, for example, they also pay taxes. The editor has ceased to be the key person. It is the marketing manager who is the key person. I say marketing manager here of one of the places. That requires more interrogation in terms of scholarship because states that are democratic are supposed to support public service media, but also at the same time, for media to survive doesn't mean that they must forget their tenets, their heritage, their role expectations of information, education, and entertainment. I don't know whether I've answered it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rugyendo. It has been a very beautiful interaction between you and the panelists. Allow us to take a retreat of 10 minutes, and then we shall come back and give our final verdict. In the meantime, you can sip your water. There's still a few bottles there. And Dale, please have a seat and feel relaxed. As we come back.
Excuse me, we have our book of attendance. Those who haven't registered in it, it will be just on the table here. Feel free to record your name there, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being patient with us. Allow me to introduce our deputy principal. I never had the opportunity to introduce him. He came in the middle of the defense, Professor Eli Kawich. You're very welcome. And thank you very much for attending this Viva. Okay, I think now the camera is on. Colleagues and friends, I think we've had a wonderful exchange with between the panelist and the candidate. And after that interesting and beautiful exchange, we went for a brief retreat to further think through the entire defense. And this is the outcome. In terms of the candidate's knowledge of the subject, the panel found the candidate very good. In terms of the candidate's presentation skills, the panel feels that he is very good. In terms of the quality of the thesis, the panel feels it is good. And the candidate's response to questions was very good. Despite those observations, the panel has made quite a number of suggestions geared towards improving your work. There are quite a number, but in summary, these are some of the things that you'll be working out with your supervisor. Good enough, Dr. Tayeebwa has been taking notes, so you don't have to write. Maybe you'll buy him a cock is small, a big cow, because has really been, taking notes to ensure that he takes you through this revision exercise with ease. But the first one, there is a need for you to align the abstract to the study. There is a mismatch between the abstract and the study. The question of new vision being a case or a case study should be fixed. And if possible, remove the notion of case study in your work completely because you do not do a case study. The academic language is lacking in many areas. At times the journalism in you took over. So you need to refine the language. Yeah, the methodology is too long. And actually, that was mentioned by all the three examiners. You need to trim it. You include too many things, and some of them you don't even apply them to your study. There is contradictions between the methodology and the findings, especially where you talk of anonymity and then you indicate the names, so you need to fix those small things. The panel feels that you should separate the theory from the literature chapter. They also emphasize that there is a need to conceptualize the term ePaper, and this should stand out, at least in your literature review. They also feel that there is need to rethink how WhatsApp relates to the ePaper. And there is need to clarify there's need to clarify that whereas you talk about other media, Monitor and the rest, somewhere you should indicate it that your case was New Vision so that people don't get confused when they read your work. And lastly, there's need to indicate the different phases of the ePaper in the evolution, in how it has evolved, indicate those particular phases. They feel that this is missing and yet it is important. Overall, the committee feels that your work is worth the award of the PhD. I therefore, on behalf of the School of Languages, Literature, and Communication, recommend you to Makerere University for the award of PhD in Journalism of Makerere University. Congratulations. And you can have my hug now. The photo time moment will be coming. Before you bring the flowers and the rest, you have up to maximum of 3 months to revise your work. Should you fail to do so, it will require you to resubmit for re-examination. That is the policy. So make sure you do whatever you can do within 3 months. But you can also take a week or 2 to fix this. Your supervisor has already promised that after here is going to give you a room in his office where you will be staying to ensure that you complete this work in time. And this being the last defense for this season, I would like to thank everyone who has made it possible to produce 9 PhDs. That has been a bumper harvest for us as School of Languages, Literature, and Communication. I would like to thank Rugyendo's family. Is the wife here? Please come and join him. The children, the parents, please come and join Dad. Thank you for being there for my student and ensuring that he completes his work. They say behind a great man, there is a greatest woman, if I may call it. Thank you very much. I believe without you, it wouldn't have been possible for him to complete this. Now you can thank whoever you want to thank and then call it a day.
Finally, I feel like I thought I was a lion, but today at the lectern, I was feeling like a real rabbit, a small rabbit without it. This is baptism of fire. I want to really thank God for this moment. But before I say anything, we have a spokesperson for the family, Rugyendo, briefly.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Loena Rugyendo, as my dad has said. I'd like to thank you all for being here to support him as he has defended his PhD that he has been awarded. And to Daddy, I'm very emotional, so I might cry, but we're all very proud of you. This is a very big achievement. To attain a very high level of education, it's not easy. And one thing I want to say that is very important is that achievements can't be blessings unless we honor God through them. So I wanted to tell Daddy, as God has brought him this far to achieve this achievement, let God see him honoring him through it. Thank you so much.
The boys also want to say something.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. My name is Rugyendo, and I just want to congratulate my father for achieving this goal. I hope that you do greater things.
Okay. During the presentation, I promised to talk about this acknowledgement. I didn't do it, so this is my time to do that. I honor God definitely for giving me strength and wisdom to really get this far. There is this common question that came about me writing like a journalist. It is because I was from the streets into academia, and that transition has been so difficult. But for Kacharimo, but I thank my supervisors, Dr. William Tayeebwa and Dr. Mbaine. I think Dr. Mbaine is online, but William Tayeebwa, he has been a father to me. I don't know what I'll give you, but I know you love cows. Dr. William Tayeebwa is he's just an easy guy, but he uses soft power. He's so hard inside. He will not let you to underrate him. That is not going to happen. He's a wonderful supervisor, and really, I pray to you that I pray to God that God rewards you abundantly, takes you higher. He's now heading our Mark Press, meaning he really has a divine duty to improve academia and scholarship in this university. For Dr. Mbaine, I can't say so much. I don't know what to say about him. Dr. Mbaine is analog. When he's examining you, you send him your draft, and he tells you, please send me a print version. Then he'll smudge it with all sorts of red color pens until you understand how to make a quality product. Dr. Mbaine, I thank you so much for being a brother to me and ensuring that I transform these two people and many others I talk about. When I got a challenge in 2017, I was arrested. I was arrested for publishing a story that prejudiced national security and charged with treason together with my colleagues. And I went to Narfenya. There's a colleague of mine whom I studied with here, and he's from Uganda prisoners. He's not the one, but he kept me very well when I was in the prison. But please, Commissioner Apolo Bakwata, please, Ankunda. He's my classmate in sociology, 1996, 99, just across here. Because I'm multidisciplinary, if you check my work, you'll find a lot of political science, sociology, fusing with journalism, and also space science and many other things, and marketing. So so from there, because I will be brief because this is really what touches me, and I got emotional when I reached this slide. When I came out, because I was accused with my colleagues that we wanted to make Rwanda and Uganda fight, and I'm like, really, Rugyendo, I've never touched a gun. What is the problem here? But it taught me very many lessons, and these two people, Tayeebwa and Adolf, there is Gilbert Gumoshabe Mugumya and many others I'm going to mention, sat me down and say, why don't you think about a career change for the meantime? Because I'm extremely bitter. In fact, I had even finished a draft of a document launching a political party, and they said, you are now going into the furnace. They extracted me, brought me here to get used. I spent the whole year just sitting in their offices failing to understand how do I transform into an academician. I never wanted to be one, but now here I am, transformed, sharpened, and looking into a different direction to serve our country and the region, and especially our profession, which is facing challenges from different corners. In other words, a political crisis. So I want to thank my doctoral committee members, Dr. Kakoza. Oh my God. Dr. Kakoza is from my clan. I'm from an Ente clan. If I were Muganda, I would be a Katongole. That's why I love him. He looked at my first draft, my first proposal, and changed my title. And when you're asking questions, I'm like, is this the guy who... He led me into a corner, now he's asking questions. Because I was focusing on social media, and he says, but Rugyendo, what haven't we said about social media? Who hasn't talked about social media? Isn't there something where you have been in the industry? Because I started a newspaper from Nkrumah here, that red paper. Very young boy that time. And so I've lived journalism, really, from the streets, from the ghettos. And he said, isn't there something there that you have seen that we can benefit from as scholars? Is there something fresh? And I said, yeah, there are these things called ePapers. He said, yeah, that's it. There's something fresh that we don't know about them that we don't know. Can we tell us? That's how the topic changed. I thank you so much. But your question is landmines. Dr. Gilbert Gumoshabe, when I was running around trying to focus, because I was not from the journalism department, I was from sociology, I was like, where do I begin from? We go to the same church. We are actually seminarians, we're supposed to be priests. But he sat me in his office and said, here is a chair. Sit here, I teach you how to write a synopsis. He was the first person that literally supervised me. Taught me, I didn't know anything like methodology, I didn't know anything. I was used to writing news stories. And he sat me down, bought me lunch, got me to speaking to the different people here to try to get acclimatized with the environment. But he's one of the key people that diverted me from something I was going to do. Thank you for diverting me, because now I have a better direction. Dr. Davis Nyangaro Mugumya, I don't know whether you know the middle name for me. Oh, so Dr. Davis is a big brother to me. I think the critical reader was talking about my my backgrounding about technologies and media journeys and all this. It is Levis really who took me into this, to try to understand how technologies have been shaping up. I'm so grateful, Levis. I'm so grateful for being there for me and for really recalibrating my proposal that led to this. The support team, my research assistants who are not here, I think they're online. I really thank them. Nimra, I thank you. I thank Makerere University for giving me an opportunity to become an academician, because people who are asking me to try something said they wanted to see how they can benefit from my industry experience and inform academia here. And Makerere gave me that space. But the biggest thing I want to thank Makerere for is that there is this stereotype before I came, and even raised it with friends, that you go to Makerere and you'll never finish. I said, let me go there and prove everyone wrong. And I have finished on time. I appreciate Chus, Deputy Principal, Professor which I have known you for a very long time. And but towards the end of this, from the time I submitted around the end of September. And so my examination took so long, and for some reasons I will not say, but Professor stood his ground and said, Rugyendo, we must make sure you are on the graduation list. I hope I will be, and thank you for the support, that incredible support you gave to accelerate to help accelerate my defense. I would like to thank the School of Languages, Literature and Communication. Auntie gave me sleepless nights. People you. Thank you for chairing this session. Thank you for seeing me through this. Thank you for not refusing to pick my calls when things almost went bad regarding my examination process. And you said, you promised me that you would do it. And you've seen the emotion here. They know everything of what happened. But this aunt here, this grandma here, is the one who has made this happen. Please go and give her a special hug for me. JCOM, Journalism and Communication Department, Dr. Namsoga. Hi. Dr. Fred, most especially Dr. Aisha. Oh my God, the head of the department, I think she's left. The colleagues in the department, I see Associate Dr. Mabel Twegumye, Zache. Oh, I see Dr. I'll speak about him later. Oh my God, I see so many people here. Jesus Christ, thank you so much for giving me a supportive environment at the department. I never lacked anything. If I wanted them to hear me out, criticize me, read through my documents, they were available, very supportive. And I hope that I can share my industry experience to ensure that we grow our department. Before I want to thank my mentors, my doctoral mentors. One of them is here, Dr. Wenga Borutashoboroka. Our names are very hard, from the University of Singapore. Doctor, when I came here, when I was horsing around with the Dr. Gumoshabe, I couldn't understand how to get started. Then I saw an advert on social media about some training at Ugema University, the Kampala campus here. So now when I went there is where I met him. He was the one who was facilitating it and teaching us about problematization, conceptualization. These things I was not understanding them because I was from the prisons. And particularly how a problem statement is different from a statement of the problem. Then how a problem, no, I don't know how, I don't know. But he has walked this journey with me. He's taken me through. At the end of the day, when I finally was cleared for defense, there was a glitch on my tuition. There was a small balance of close to 5 million shillings. He paid it. I can't say so many things. I don't want to. There are so many, I can spend a whole day here talking about you. But thank you for coming. I wish your daughter and my daughter can have a conversation. I want to thank the critical reader who never wants to be mentioned. I have had contestations with Dr. Isaac for a very long time on the forum for Tuesday, WhatsApp forum. And sometimes people would come into my inbox and say, Pati, where is the thesis? Where is the thesis? It is now in your hands. You saw it and you passed it. I thank you, ITK, in a special way, because iron sharpens iron. You've been a very big iron in my corner, and I was surprised. And then pleasantly surprised when I just learned this morning, just a few minutes to my defense, that you were my critical reader. I had no idea you would be my critical reader. I got scared. I started shaking. And I'm like, well, I am here. This is it. Let me face it. Let come what may. Including all the panelists that were here that gave very good support. In that case, I also want to thank a special dream team, which took me on Wednesday into a grilling session here in this same room. I had not thought that mock defenses are important, but that dream team decided to just grab me from the library and say, you must do a mock defense. And interestingly, when I came to do this mock defense, Dean, I took 61 minutes presenting. They were like, where are you going? I got scared. I called my wife. I said, can you allow me sleep at the guest house today? Because I must go back to slide number 1 and see what to do about them. The slides were too many, were like 65. But today, they came down to around 29 because of that dream team, led by my former president, I was her speaker, Dr. Claire Cheromoy. Please stand up. I want you to clap for Cheromoy. I have never seen kindness in this town. She's so concerned about her fellow PhD students, especially who are facing challenges like mine. Thank you so much. You know, I can say so much about you and because of time, but she organized Dr. Waluria here. She organized my fellow student, Chirangat, Emily. Chirangat is the one who has been paying all the money, all the dues for my research carol. She's there, zero stand up. She decided to pay. I said, why are you paying for me? I said, I know your challenges. She has been paying for me. She was part of that team. Professor Farouk, where is he? Professor Farouk gave me comments. I was like, this is serious. I called my supervisor, said, can you be part of this? He said, no, you need some people who are not in my line to hear from them, especially the ones who have already defended, share experiences with you. So that's how I ended up with Claire here, and also ended up with Dr. Sereko and Nelson. He was all here. They helped trim my slides down to what you have seen, this beautiful thing today. I thank you guys. I call you the dream team. We have done it. I want to thank Mark Reef. I was a self-sponsored student. There's a time when I was submitting and I got emotional because I saw the Vice Chancellor. When I reached this slide, I saw the Vice Chancellor behind and I got emotional because here in this university, you cannot submit if you have not cleared your tuition. By the time of submission, end of September, my tuition balance was 23.2 million shillings. I said, what do I do? But I am a volunteer. I like to work. I never, hate any piece of work. So I've been volunteering at the Legacy magazine of this university, which is under the endowment fund. And so then I served as a leader twice, unopposed as a speaker of the PhD forum, and also unopposed speaker of DAG Hall. And afterwards, I influenced the next 3 leaderships. And also with Claire and many others, we fought for students who are about to be thrown out of that place because they wanted to renovate it. So I used all these reasons to reach out to the Vice Chancellor directly in his office. I said, please, I'm sure I will pay this money and allow me to just submit this book. The Vice Chancellor dodged me for 2 weeks. And the book was done. ITK was like, where is the thesis? He didn't know what I was going through. And then finally, I grabbed him in his office. I said, I'm not leaving this office. You must do something. Please, sir, you are our headmaster here. You must understand that we students have different challenges. And so I said, so what is it? When are you going to pay? He said, around November. I didn't know. He said, okay, this is an exceptional case. I want to write to your dean. I want to write to the college. And they give you space up to the end of December. That's where it ended. And I thank him. He was here. I thank you so much for enabling me. And but importantly, I was able to convince Dean because when Dean read the letter, you're like, Patricia, no, you don't have money. He said, Dean, I have a good head which picks everything. He said, you will not understand the situation. I mean, just this out. He said, okay, because it's an order. Okay, please submit your books. And I submitted them. And through Daniel here, Daniel, you're also part of the dream team, by the way, Daniel. Daniel has helped me through this crisis I was talking about that the dean helped me with. Daniel, thank you so much. And so I cleared. I submitted, and then after submission, then I started looking for the money. I failed to get it, but there are people I will thank later who also helped me to clear it. That's why I was getting emotional. The PhD fellows, my vice president, there are many. Please stand up for recognition. Thank you so much from MOBS. This is the team from MOBS. Dr. Priva there. Oh, God. Dr. Isire, Nezerwe Neza, Kuona. And then so many people were there. Oh, my friend. Don. So I thank you very much for being here with me. And my friends, there. Carol, we work together at the Young Engineers Uganda, where we promote STEM education for children. Thank you for coming and for sponsoring me as a young engineer. Oh, there is one important person, and I'll end up with him, was just coming. But I want to thank my family. They have been the anchor in all this. At one point, they could not understand what is really causing me unnecessary started around 2020 during COVID time. He came, he would see me. I always explained, said, okay, God will see you through. God has seen me through. I remember that thing he wrote to me. Chibubu Kuriha Chibubu. Garwanda, this is Garwanda Migisha. She's in senior 3. She's going senior 3 at Viva College. Yes. Tatina Rugyendo Ruchirabona is in going P7. Rugambwa Kayambezaka Rugyendo is going to senior 4 in SMAC. Then the spokesperson of the home, Muiza Rugyendo, is in IS4 vacation. This is my little family because I was born, I didn't see my dad. My mom also died in 2017. She would have been here, but I have a mother, I don't know whether she was online. The one who cleared my fees for secondary school, an Irish nun, very old now, 83 years, but you'll see her soon. And I thank you, my family. Particularly, I want to thank my father-in-law. He decided to come and see me. Maybe you can greet them in 2 minutes.
Thank you, my son-in-law. I don't know how to begin, and I will request an excuse from you all, because my English is not polished like yours. For you are academicians, me, I'm a peasant from the village. A lot what I would want to speak. But let me first thank the trainers. Let me put it easy. You may call yourselves another language, but let me call you the trainers of my son-in-law, Rugyendo. Thank you so much for being supportive. Thank you so much for educating. If you really don't educate, because education is low, for you, you are high. I don't know how to call it. Lecturing may be. So I thank you so much. And my thank, I think I will ask Jesus Christ. I'm a Catholic. I will ask Jesus Christ to come down and thank everybody of you. Now, I am an old man. I am 78 years now. When you see me shedding tears, don't laugh at me. The tears will be tears of joy. Let me begin with my son-in-law. On a sad note, this boy, I'm sorry to call you a boy, he was arrested because of maybe of their work, because of maybe politics, I don't know. When he was in jail, I want to thank my daughter. I don't know whether for you to get me arrested. Thank your wife. The way this girl, sorry to call you a girl, the way he prayed, it was no, in fact. There is no peace where she didn't reach. There is the son of the big man, biggest man in the country. That one, this one was holding him by the neck. And we thought maybe she would be also arrested. So I want to thank her in front of you for the supportive, bravery supportive they gave to my son. Now, dear granddaughters and sons, this is an example. They are hardworking. Hardworking has a lot of behind it. Discipline. Discipline is almost number one. Because discipline includes everything. It includes even the education, even what not. So be disciplined, hardworking, and God will answer as always. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how to give speeches. Sorry if I have delayed, but may God bless you all. Thank you so much.
As we conclude, thank you very much. Maybe you can go sit now.
Now, I'm very sorry. I'm so happy. I just forgot to say sorry. I'm so happy that I don't know how to give back to this gentleman. I've given him cows, but I will give him another Frisian cow. Please. In Runyankore, they say, that even if you have, but when you add, it's not bad. So he has cows, but I'm giving him another Frisian. But thank you so much because of the hard work.
Thank you, Dad, for the PhD cow. You can now go and sit as I conclude. Yes, I had forgotten Dr. Kero, who is left, one of the PhD fellows who sits with me in the research carrows. Dr. Adela, I forgot to mention you. Please, thank you so much. Finally, there is one slide remaining, but I will not really read it. It's just for you to show, to appreciate these people who have given me all the support along the way since 2017. They are part of this historicization of my PhD. They are all here. I will not mention them, but if you are online, please, you are seeing yourselves. Thank you so much. The UPL board, I'm the chairman of all the football in Uganda, by the way. There's quite a lot there. So I thank you so much. God bless you. I feel like I've been relieved, but the journey has started. I now translate, I'm the first journalist probably in this region to translate research products into easy to read news stories. This is where I'm going. If we have any research product, we want to newsify it, making sure even the lowest of the echelons of our society understand science, understand scientific research, and apply it in their daily lives. Thank you very much. May God bless you all. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Aunt. I don't know how you're feeling, but thank you. You know why I'm saying this. Thank you very much. Maybe my
It's not a speech, trust me. But I think when he was making his remarks, he alluded to the fact that I am the managing editor of the University Press, which is to publish not only books by academics or professors, but also others. And as Dr. Chiromoy has been saying, we as a Mark Press want to translate all your dissertations into journal articles, but if you can translate that into a book, that is most appreciated. So the Dean and Mark Press has a couple of books to donate to Dr. Rugyendo, so that to remind him that number one, his PhD ought to be translated into a book, that the work has just started. But number two, that he has earned what? He's now a doctor of what? Of philosophy. What does philosophy mean? Thinker. A big thinker. So Dr. Rugyendo, you've started your journey of being a bookworm. So we are giving you books published by colleagues within this college, so that you can read your colleagues and continue in that journal publication. Congratulations, my dear friend and colleague. And now you have become a colleague. So congratulations, Dr. Rugyendo.
Okay, my role ends here. May God bless you. Dean, please, before you go, we have a small cake. So the Dean will be here. Rugyendo, please. So the panel, please join us. Dr. William, Professor, please join us here. The principal, our dear principal, please.
I forgot
Dr. Isaac.
to introduce my cousin there.
Isaac, please
We
join
worship Kamuganga, please. He has also started his PhD journey here in Makerere. Another cousin, Patrick Rwabishari there is my first cousin
and the
as well.
family, please.
Thank you.